And again, this is Kathrine Killebrew, who is our city forester. And I'm gonna just hit the arrows back and forth. Okay,
Yeah.
so that one goes forward. Take the mouse right there. Okay. All right, if it don't work, I'll scream. So we're doing best management practices for planting ornamental plants, and that includes trees, bushes, any type of woody ornamental. Carla's always got these slides that she's made up, so we just use them in here. We don't want to reinvent the wheel. And just screw it. Let's see. Oh, there we go. I'm used to a Mac. You do it? There it goes. When's the best time to plant trees and shrubs? What do y'all think? Fall. Fall? When in fall? That's the question. When is fall here in Tennessee? Sometimes not till December, right? I've been here since '66 and I've seen all kinds of falls. I've seen all kinds of springs. Now, we'll say our climate's not like it was when I got here. And that kind of started a shift about the 80s. It got warmer. We had less snow. Sometimes we have more snow. Sometimes we have more cold. Like our big cold spell we had, not this past November, the November before him. We had a whole bunch of cryptomerias and evergreen trees, and I had built a whole riparian buffer or wind buffer at Heritage Park, consists of 100 some odd trees, and half of those were decimated. They were killed. So I had to go out and get another grant, and I had to replace all the ones that had died, and I was very sad. But there's nothing you can do for stuff like that. And that was probably half the trees in Clarksville, even on private property, that a lot of evergreens died, because Carl and I run around for months. Yep, it's dead. Yep, it's dead. Just demon stuff that was dead. And it was because of the extreme cold. The plants did not have enough time, the evergreens, to take up enough water. And it had been dry before then. And it's kind of like when your car doesn't get enough radiator fluid. That was it. If you water them, that will help. If we do spraying, it's not gonna do any good. They've got to be able to soak that water up into the roots and deep up into those roots. As long as they get it into there, like I said, it works like radiator fluid. Those trees wouldn't have died. But it was just the amount of the temperature drop in so little of a time. And I can't remember how many degrees it was off the top of my head. I've slept 3 times since then. But yeah, there was no hope for it. And that was all across Clarksville. Everybody called me about all the trees. So, yes, ma'am.
So when you talk about, I don't young, like, they're young apple trees now. I know that I'm gonna leave my home. So this we can get used to it, or
No.
Nope. Because I was learning from the last time, they said, okay, you leave them outside so they can get like parties, so they can actually do some good for them in life. But should I like something ground up this kind of the trees or yeah, or can I just leave it? It's gonna like continue.
How long have you had it?
It's been a little bit.
I've done that.
It started indoors, and like we started from seeds, so it's been indoors and like okay, okay. So where it got super hot, we just kind of it did so much better. The air conditioning.
Well, it's a native plant, and apples are made to go outside. If you can hold on another month, it's going to be ideal for actually planting trees. I like to plant trees in October because our rainy season started this past week. It's here. So I generally start October 1, and I will go through about the first week of March. After that, I will not plant another tree. Our survival rate so far.
What about apple trees? Does apple trees count in that for October?
Yes, I like to plant all of them in. Yeah, there are sometimes you can do it in spring, but spring it doesn't. When you plant a tree in spring, it doesn't get the roots established on it like it's supposed to. It needs to work more on making roots than it does on leaves.
Yeah,
it doesn't have the right microbes and the sugars and does the photosynthesis. I mean, it needs all that stuff to work with the roots first. That's why I just don't plant any trees in spring. And if you've ever noticed, look around town, all your develops and everything is like, oh, we're gonna develop this spring, and we're gonna take a tree and we're gonna shove it in the ground and it's gonna live. Not, because most of them die.
Yeah.
Number one, they walk off and they forget about them. They'll put a tree bag around them, a little watering bag, and they'll let that tree heat up with the watering bag on it on an 80-degree day. How much do you think the water actually is in Fahrenheit about the end of the day on a 90-degree day? Probably boiling hot. So now you're boiling your bark. That's not good. You know, you need to just take a 5-gallon bucket and give that guy a drink each week. You know, I 5 gallons a week is generally what I do my trees when they're first started, and I do it for 2 years. If you can do it for 2 years to get that tree established with the roots, that tree will live. Out of all our trees, we've got roughly, I calculated, about a 97.9% survival rate for the city.
Do you fertilize?
Not for the first 2 years.
You don't fertilize a new sapling or a new tree, apple tree, any tree?
If I do fertilize, I go and get what's called Fertilome. It is a very, very, very weak solution of fertilizer. Used to, you could get it at Rural King. Now I haven't seen it, so I've been ordering it off Amazon. But we actually will put it in our 5-gallon bucket of water for our new guys, and we'll water them with that about every 2 weeks. We'll use that fertilizer. But it's just so very little that it only stimulates the roots and it doesn't stimulate the rest of the tree. Fertilome, Fertilome. I'm trying to remember. I'm trying to remember what the percentage is of each one. I mean, it is like really, really, really weak, even weaker than fish fertilizer. Just enough. Because you don't want that to fertilize that tree for the first 2 years. You want to work on an awesome root system. And that's how your tree's going to survive if it has an awesome root system.
Or just here.
This is just what I do, you know. I mean, this is UT Extension. I'm just telling you what I do personally. I mean, you can go by this. This is not a bad thing. This is, but you know, I'm telling you my survival rate. I mean, I've played with it. I've tested it. I've planted hundreds of trees. It works. And you say that tree's been that pot for about a year, maybe 2. Okay, I do the same thing. I'm bad about if I have any leftover trees from Tree City, Arbor Day. We'll get the little bare root trees and I'll pot them up, and they're behind my shop. I've got some there that's been there about a year and a half. I've got one I just realized the other day. I'm like, where'd you come from, buddy? He's been there 2 years. He kind of got lost in the shuffle. I need to pull them out, trim the roots of them, jam them back in a bigger pot. You can actually do that. But yes, and I'm bad about, I will move trees here, there, and yonder. I've got some growing at my house right now. So what am I doing? I've got some witch hazel and I've got some hazelnuts that have sat in pots for about a year. But when we moved, my trees came with me. So I understand that, and I put them where I'm at now. Most, what?
Can I ask you a question about, I have somebody that planted some apple trees, and it was near the garden, and we put rock all around it.
Before she planted it?
No, after he planted it. It's only a year old, but I'm like, well, it's not getting the elements. It's not.
Right.
So
That's a problem that we're working with the fire departments right now. Maybe the city forester was supposed to be about trees, but now it's about adopted plots and fire departments in downtown Franklin Street, Strawberry Alley, and then it's fixed to be City Hall. It's coming to me. I can see that. I just need your help. That's coming too. But that's the problem with rock. All the fire departments, because the guys, you know, they're like, hey, let's just throw some rock on there so we don't have to go back and get some mulch anymore. So now I've been charged with removing all the rock. We started with a dogwood tree over at Station 1 on Main Street. As full of dogwood tree. It was about July, and when I actually calculated the temperature around that dogwood tree, it was almost 120 degrees. It had the creek rock around it, and I took my little thermal temperature like you would hold somebody, and just I gauged it, and I told the guys, I said, "Look at this," and they're like, "Wow." We removed the rock, put mulch on it, and it went down to 86 degrees. So that poor tree, it was showing signs of stress. The edges were starting to frown on the dogwood tree, and the dogwood tree is pretty good size. We did very little pruning that day. Actually, when we removed the rock, I stood there with a water hose for an hour and a half. And I just kept watering it and watering it and watering it until I could get a screwdriver to stick down in there because that dirt was so compacted. And then when I was done, I've got an old golf club that, I've taken and cut the end off of it, sharpen the end, and I'll just jab holes. And that actually will help the air come into it and will actually pull the water into it. And that's what I did. My guys had never seen me do it before. I'm like, all right, let me show you something. So we did that, and we put the mulch on it. Well, I added some fertilizer on there because the dogwoods, they're used to being, having some type of compost. They love organic matter. And there's no telling how long that tree had sat with no organic matter underneath it at all. I think that was part of the problem. When I checked the pH was kind of off. So I gave it some organic matter, and I applied very, very little bit of organic fertilizer that I got in the bag up at Lowe's. I mean, just barely enough to even do anything. And I watered the heck out of it again for another 30 minutes while my guys went and got some mulch, and then we mulched it. It looks better now.
Are you putting the mulch right around the base, or are you making a moat? And then,
No, this was a whole area about as big around, and there's 2 or 3 of those tables put together with that dogwood trees in. And I took all that rock out and I remulched. I put plain old wood chip mulch in there.
which it's not
Mulch from co-op. It was
Oh,
brown
okay.
mulch.
brown mulch.
We get it in the 1 ton, so we get it by the cubic yard. And so I think we went through a full cubic yard on that.
So, because I've seen a lot of the cities putting.
That's the street department.
Huh?
I am true, yes. I have told them and told them and told them, Carla has told them not to do the volcano mulching around the trees.
Yeah,
So when they come over there and they mulch, you'll see me and my team going around and we'll be taking the mulch down from around the trees. The volcano mulch actually stimulates the roots at the very top to come up instead of go back down.
right.
And that's what's wrong with a lot of the trees. If you remove the mulch right now, you would see all kinds of circling stuff going on. I mean, those trees I need to get in there and actually do a root pruning. That's going to be when it goes dormant. Because it's made all the roots grow the trees, pretty much. It looks horrible. But it seems like every time I get one set of guys actually trained, and girls, excuse me, on those teams that actually come through and mulch, and I think that's why we're getting City Hall next year. The turnover is so high with the street department, because most of the street department people go over to gas and water once they get trained. Yes, ma'am. I do 3 by 3 by 3. I like to do roughly about that deep and about 3 wide and about 3 this way. 3 feet is what I like to do. 3 feet. You gotta think, this mulch is gonna settle. And once the rain hits it and it starts to settle, what you put on there is gonna pancake to right back here. Now, I move the mulch away from the base of the tree because I know that it doesn't need to be touching it, because that sets it up to be damp. That sets up for, disease and everything else, pests. So you just kind of pull the mulch away from the tree and you're okay. But yeah, I'll mulch them deep. That's where they take the mulch and they heap it up against the bottom part. And it looks like a volcano. Yeah. You'll see state parks do it. I went to Mammoth Cave and I was like, this is me. Who's y'all's forester? And they're like, we don't have one. I'm like, who's in charge of the trees? Well, that'd be the landscapers. Do you have a landscaper? Can I talk to him? And they went and got him. And I told him, hey, I need to talk to you. And I said, let's talk about some of your trees over here. And yeah, he was not happy, but he did learn some things. And you know what? That's our job. is to make sure that we point out what's wrong and what's right. And you guys as master gardeners can take on that job. You know, tell somebody, if it's wrong, tell them, save the tree, save the bush, save whatever. You know, because you get so many people that are just, it's just a tree. No, it's not just a tree. It's not just a bush. It's so much more than that. It's part of our green infrastructure for Clarksville. You know, and that's what I'm trying to get across to City of Clarksville right now. After we have tree inventory, we have 5,048 trees that are in a manicured area that were inventory. That's on public property. That's a lot of trees. You know how many people that work for me, including myself? 3.
Wow.
That's 1,600 trees a piece. That's a lot of trees that we've been taking care of for years. And I've been here 11 years. And there's no stopping. You know, they're like, well, y'all don't do anything on rainy days. Oh, yes, we do. We go out and we prune trees. As long as it's not raining as hard as what it was raining early this morning, you'll see us out there. And we'll be out there pruning. That's what you got to do. We're fixing trees, pruning trees, planting trees. We're doing something. We never slow down. So, and most of the time you're going to see us actually plant those trees. We have a TAPE grant, Tennessee Agriculture Enhancement Program. If you ever wondered if you smoke or if you chew or where all your tax dollars are going, they're buying me trees. So you keep on smoking and chewing. I told my husband, I was like, I want him to quit smoking and chewing, and he still chews. I'm like, keep chewing, big boy. I said, because you're buying me some trees. He's like, that's not very funny.
So you're saying that you said 5,048 trees. That's where are they at? Clarksville Park and Recreation, or just all over Clarksville where the city owns?
All over the city of Clarksville.
Oh, trees that the city owns?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, like at the parks and like
Yeah.
at the park,
It's
different
golf
parks
courses and everywhere.
golf courses. Oh, okay.
Downtown on the streets, everywhere. Yes, ma'am.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
We got FEMA property that the city have actually bought back, and we have trees on the FEMA property, but because it's city property, those trees are in that inventory. So it's everywhere. Hopefully in the next few months, we're hoping to be able to put that inventory where everybody can see it online, underneath the Forest Division site. And we also hope, we're working on a grant right now to do a canopy study. Now, inventory is totally different than canopy, and a lot of people don't understand that. Your inventory is what's boots on the ground. You actually go and you look at the tree, you stand, this is a species trees, you walk around it like we did the redbud out there, what kind of condition it is, what's the diameter of this tree at breast height, and you record that. And it's a lot of little dots on a GIS program, but it's starting to help us. I'm getting my guys to understand. They got their iPads yesterday. And so we're fixing to have a whole class on what Tree Keeper 8 does, that David Tree did for us. And sorry, I done one class today and I'm getting bored and then holler later this afternoon. But a canopy study is actually what our green structure entails for City of Clarksville and Montgomery County. We want to know exactly how much green is left. We have had so much development for the City of Clarksville. We're down canopy. And when you get down a canopy in any city, you'll start to see flooding. I've got a lot of homeowners that I've actually gone to their house and they're like, I've lived here 40 plus years. My house is starting to flood. What's going on? Well, it's because they built a subdivision all around you. They took away all your green trees, all your forested areas, and they leveled it to the ground instead of keeping what trees that were actually there. And now this is why you're flooding. And they're, what can you do? I said, you're gonna have to talk to your city council person. I said, you're gonna have to talk to them about, figuring out how to redo the development for Clarksville. And the developers just, you cannot get them to understand to leave the big trees. The big trees mitigate more stormwater than if you remove that big tree and you planted 50 small ones. I mean, you're talking about thousands of gallons for a big tree. I mean, big versus a small 2-caliber tree. They don't take up as much water as big tree does. I had a lady this past week, she complained about her neighbor's tree that was behind her yard, the biggest red oak I think I've seen in Clarksville so far. And I was like, I said, it needs to be, yes, the limb fell off, it hit your fence, it crunched your fence, But now we know what kind of tree you have, you know, and now that we look at it, let's put it in the big tree contest for this year, you know? But all it needs is, you know, an arborist, a good arborist, make sure that if you do get an arborist or someone to cut your tree, that they're either arborist certified or they know what an arborist certification is, because if not, they will top your tree and leave you with a mess. And then 5 years later, you're gonna be paying a god-awful price to have those trees removed because those trees are gonna die. Yeah. I had a little German lady out on the north side of town. They stopped at her house and told her the trees need to come away from her house because they were worried about her roof. And she bought into it. These were these fly-by-night guys. And they came and they topped her trees down to stubs. And when I went and saw her trees, when she finally called me 2 years later, she was wanting to know how come all the twigs and the tree was falling apart. Well, because they topped her trees. They were at that point on a limited income because they had both retired from the military. They had no finances to spend. I think I figured it was roughly about $45,000 to remove 8 trees from around their house.
Wow.
Yeah, and they'll price gouge you. And they'll ruin your trees. So make sure when you do have someone come to your trees, number one, make sure they got a good insurance policy, $1 million. That's what they should have. They don't have insurance, they'll be like, bye. Because, you know, you don't want a tree falling on your house. That's part of it. And you don't want them topping your trees. And you tell them, I don't want my tree topped. I want it lateral pruned. That way it will not fall or mess with the house or interfere with the roof. And you want it done arbor certified. They know what it is. They just don't want to do it because it's quicker to just go through and that's it. That way they can get their stuff in, they can get their stuff out, and then they can go price gouge somebody else. And they'll run your tree. So those are the people you got to look for. We need to pass the slide. Any more questions? All right, so straighten me up every now and then. Like I said, I like to actually establish my trees, you know, October, November, December, January. And then sometimes like the 1st of March, I generally will stop about the 3rd week of March. That's when Clarksville starts getting warm. And I want those in the ground. I get them mulched and we turn them on and then we start monitoring for their health. And make sure that they're planted, make sure they're watered every week. If it doesn't rain, water it. And if you don't think it's getting enough rain, and it has rain, water it some more. And you're not going to hurt that tree. My favorite method is to drill a couple small holes in a 5-gallon bucket, fill that 5-gallon bucket up and just let that water just sit by that tree and it will gradually suck into the bottom of the tree. I don't like tree bags because it heats the tree bag up because you're going to have to live in there in the summertime. So just boiling your bark off. Why? And then you're going to spend, what is it, $20 for a tree bag? Money wasted. Don't do it.
So you put holes in the bottom of the 5-gallon bucket, fill it and just let it sit there.
Just get you some really small holes and just do a whole bunch of pinholes in the bottom. Fill it up.
Aerate it around?
Huh?
You aerate it around the
You just
tree?
just sit it next to the tree and it'll just absorb all the water. And make sure that you mulch your new tree, because if you don't mulch your new tree, your tree's going to die. It's got to have something to retain that water around the base of the tree to hold that water down so it doesn't condensate and go up into the air. I had who was it?
Could you describe the mulching process a little bit more? Like, do you just put mulch around the outside or in the hole before you transplant it into the yard?
No, just around the outside once you're done planting the tree.
Okay, but flat, not into a dome.
Yeah, not into a dome, not the volcano. And I thought the volcano. Let's see. Let me see if we can do this. I missed my clicker, Carl. This is what our trees look like when we get them. Once they go into the ground, of course, they weigh anywhere from 400 to 600 pounds a piece. They have to be moved by a skid steer and a chain because one person cannot pick up those trees. We had the ROTC help us when we did the riparian buffer at Trice Landing. And I had one little girl, she was so cool. She's like, I got this. And she grabbed that tree and I told her, I said, that's the last thing you don't want to do. I said, you don't want to pull that tree in there by yourself. Well, she did. That tree bounced on her and slammed her to the ground and pinned her underneath that tree. And we had to go get the skid steer to get the tree off of it, because the three guys getting down into a hole that's 4 foot deep, you can't pull something off somebody that's that heavy. So we had to go get a chain and get it off of her. I was scared it broke her hips, because I mean, it just landed right on her. And she didn't cry. She was a trooper, boy. But she said, I'll never do that again. And we always, when we plant the trees, it's generally 3 persons to a tree, because you've got to have you've got to remove all this burlap that's on here. All the string, all the burlap. And there's a cage, a wire cage that's on the outside also. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to have to remove that cage. And we generally have to have a pair of, what's the things, cut locks? Yeah, we have to have some of those, because that's how thick that wire is. And we'll actually pick it up still in the sling. And then we have what is it called? Kind of looks like a slingshot. Now, if you leave this paper on here and don't take it off, you can take that rope and slingshot that rope around it, and you can hold it and kind of let it dangle while somebody actually cuts all that stuff off. But you got to be over the hole, and you got to be really put down. It's a very, very tentative process. Because if you lose your dirt off that root ball, most of the time the tree will die. So you got to be very, very careful how you're doing it. And then playing around with 600-pound tree ain't cool either. And they're tied up, and there's all kinds of things you got to do to it before you can actually get it in the ground.
So do you actually tie it with a tree stand, or do you just bury it and, the tree stands they sell and put on a new tree that planted to keep it upright?
No, I don't use any tree stands.
Yeah, because when the wind make it hardy and kind of.
You got a problem when you're using stakes and stands. Who's going to mow around it? Who's going to get their head smacked with a tree stand or a stove?
Yeah.
The big fence post thing, we don't do the big steel farm fence post, and we don't tie anything to ours. If you're going to put a tree in the ground that size, we generally will get us some wooden posts about 3 inch or 3 foot in length, sometimes 4. Once we get them all in the ground, we go back with all those wooden stakes and we stake them in diagonally into the root ball, into the ground. That keeps the wind from shifting them around, so the roots can actually adhere to the ground underneath them. And if you just leave it there, they're going to rot. So it's not going to hurt anything. And plus, if you get it close enough, and with the mulch and everything else, then the mowers from parks or wherever you've got that tree at, it's not going to interfere with those stakes. Because the guys at parks, they hate stakes, and I get it, because when you go around a tree, you don't want to be clanged by a wooden pole in your head. So we don't do wooden poles at all. So, and going back to the apple trees, you can do the same thing with them if you want to. I had a neighbor, I probably told this story, and some of y'all heard it before. She was 92 years old, Miss Annie. And I lived over on a farm in Palmyra. And I put me an orchard in. And I saw her go by, her son, the old blue truck. And I heard it stop. And I was like, oh, she's coming back. Love Miss Annie to death. She little teeny tiny thing, little kerchief around her head. And he come back, pulled down the driveway. Miss Annie gets out of that truck with his help. And she's like, you're planting them trees wrong. I was like, Miss Annie, how do you think we need to plant these apple trees? She said, well, that one's going to fall over because you did it wrong. And that one's going to fall because I already got 2 out of 10 done. And she said, go over and get some of that riprap. Put it in the bottom of that hole with that tree. I was like, for what? She goes, trust me. She goes, those will move before the ones with riprap will. And she said, and the ones with the riprap, the roots are going to go through the riprap and it's going to hold on to the rock. And that way the wind won't shift it and it won't move it. And 2 years later, I'm standing there and going, yep, all the ones I planted before she got here, then fell sideways. And they were crooked, but the ones that I put that riprap in the bottom of the hole before I put the dirt in, I mean, they're just as straight as I'll get out. The big rock that they use for the sides of the roads, they're about anywhere from this size. There's different grades, sizes of riprap. But they had a bridge down there where I was at, so I just bought a couple of riprap. Stake it on their nose. and put it in the hole. And, it worked. So she taught me something. And so about time you think you know something, you don't, somebody else knows a little more than you do. And those trees were gonna break down that limestone rock. And what's limestone got in it? All the nutrients trees need, calcium and everything else. So it worked to the apple tree's advantage.
When you do that, you stop the tree,
Yeah, I just did it with my property. I don't think Steve's gonna be real happy if I'm going around getting rock thrown at the bottom there, and they wouldn't understand it.
like your yard. You can do that.
You could probably do it like that if you wanted to, don't put a whole bunch, just a couple of good sized ones in there, or at the base to actually hold it, keep the wind from rocking it, and those roots will grab onto it and keep it from swaying. Now, you do want a tree to sway a little bit. That's gonna make the tree where the tree's healthy. It's gonna give it, a bigger girth to it. Its branches are gonna be a little more sturdier. Because if you don't get the wind while it's young, it's not gonna be able to survive the wind when it's old. You could. I don't see why not.
Have you ever gotten trees from the Arbor Society? They give a donation, they send you 5 little.
Oh, them little runts they give you?
Yeah.
Yeah, put those in pots and I hope they grow, and I don't think I've got
they
one of them to grow.
No.
I got them from the Arbor Day Society.
Yeah.
And, I mean, they mean well, okay? But they're not a big enough tree seedling to actually establish themselves. And I mean, I think I got a hawthorn, dogwood. What was it? It was like 5 trees, I think you get. Yeah. I can get. The last mayor, what was her name? She gave me some. She's like, she need to see me. I thought, oh boy, I'm in trouble. Went up to her office and I said, what did I do? She said, you didn't do anything. I just wanted to give you something. She goes, here, I got some of these Arbor Day seedlings. She goes, make them grow. Now I looked at them and I was like, you got a hold of this? She said, yes. Oh, man. So they died. And I had some other seedlings out back, shoved them in a pot, and I'm like, here we go. She's not gonna know any different. She does now if she watches this, but what was I gonna do? I wouldn't survive. I've never had one survive every time I've ever ordered any, or somebody has showed them to me. So don't feel bad if you killed them. I've tried everything there is to those little, I don't know. I think they're stressed out when you actually get them. I don't know how long they've been out of the cooler, because tree seedlings will actually, once they're harvested, need to be kept cool. And I don't know if they got hot on the way to, in the shipping, or what happened to them, but they're stressed out.
Well,
And
I
I mean,
think-
they're just wanting to give it up.
They get them from a nursery that's close to where you live. Because I had them sent to my daughter here in Tennessee before I moved. And, they didn't do anything.
Yeah, but they're like this.
Yeah. And the
Yeah.
nursery was in Tennessee about 2 hours.
Yeah. When we order tree seedlings, this year will be April 25th. Matter of fact, I just ordered my seedlings. I think I ordered roughly about 1,200 seedlings. Our seedlings are like this, and they got a root system that's pretty fingered out. When you get your roots, when you get your seedling, we wrap it up for you. We make sure that it's not stressed. We keep ours in the cold, because when the state gives them to us, then we keep them good and chilly until you get yours. You do the drive-through. No, they're free. I do it each year. It's part of our Arbor Day, Tree City USA is what we do every year, is we actually give away free seedlings. So I'll order anywhere. When I first got here, I don't think I ordered 500, and it just keeps increasing every year. Last year we had 2,200, and I had a lot left over. We'll be on Tree Board on social media. Just keep your eye out. We'll put the dates and everything on there, or look under the City Parks and Forester, and we should have all the dates on there too, because we're working on getting our web page done. The Tree Board. Tree Board. Clarksville Tree Board. Yes, I was fixing to say, if it wasn't for Carl and the Master Gardeners, I probably wouldn't be able to distribute that many trees. COVID did teach us a lot, and it taught us that we could do just have cars come through, and we run out there and take the tickets and fill them out, and some of the Master Gardeners run out and fill the orders, and it's the best thing ever. One year that we had it where people could come up, I had people that were actually just grabbing trees and running with them. And I told my guys, I was like, go back and get some tables. We can make a blockade, you know? I mean, it was bad. And once we got the situation under control, then we were like, okay, you get 3 trees. This is what you get, you know? And everybody was all upset because they thought they could just go up there and just grab what they wanted and run off with them. That's not how this works. You know, and then you get a lot of people want to have a conversation on what you do with the tree and blah, blah, blah. And it takes up a lot of time. And then, you know, while your buddy's over here trying to fill this order, you know, and you got 10 or 15 people standing up here, 10, 15, yeah, it just wasn't working. It wasn't conducive to us moving a bunch of trees in a certain amount of time, especially that amount. So we invented the drive-through, and we've been doing it since COVID, and it works. This year we're going to actually put a QR code on there that you can click with your phone while you're doing it, and you can register your email. You can tell us about your tree later. It'll tell what species tree you have. It'll tell you how to take care of it, all in one click. That's what smartphones are good for. So why are we doing it the hard way? We're not. But yeah, if it wasn't for, how many master gardeners? 30 master gardeners? Something like that. I don't think we'd be able to give away all these tree seedlings. We were doing it the first Friday in March, but we got tired of freezing to death. And so I decided we're going to do it closer to Earth Day, which will be closer to what, last weekend in April. So, what I do with them is I pot them up in just garden dirt, natural garden. I mix garden dirt with Tennessee soil, and I'll pot them up and I'll hang on to them till fall and let them get their roots established and treat them just like they were if they were in the ground. Take care of them like little babies, and then when it gets about this time this year, I'll put them in the ground. Everybody that ever gets one's like, well, mine died. I told you to pot it up and get the roots established on it. I had a couple of street department guys the other day was like, every one of them Virginia pines died that you gave me. And I said, did you pot them up? I was like, well, if I give you some more, will you pot them up? I was like, tell you what, I'll pot them up, and then when I get the roots established, then I'll give them to you. And he's like, okay, because this is the 3rd time you ain't wasting my trees no more. So I like those guys, they're kind of cool. And like I said, spring is a popular planting season for most developers, but you know, if you're really wanting to keep trees and make sure your trees get established, go for fall. November, December, January, February. Those are the prime months to actually get those trees around the ground. Let's see, plants killed between leaving the nurse and being planted in the landscape because of mishandling. Oh yeah, that's a good one. When our trees arrive, they arrive on the biggest rig I've ever seen. It's an 18-wheeler. And he's got them all laid down, kind of diagonal on top of each other. And he's got them covered with mesh. Because when you transport these trees, think about it. If somebody threw you in the back of a truck, how do you think you'd feel by the time you got to the house? Just let you, woo, back in the back of the truck. You know, bounce around, doesn't strap you down, you know, doesn't cover your root system. You know, half your dirt's hanging out by the time you get to the house. And they're like, oh, it'll be all right. We'll just put the dirt back in there. Yeah, that tree's not going to be happy. And it's going to be stressed. The time that you went to Lowe's to get it, from the time that you made it to your house. So make sure that you do the minimum amount it takes to stress your tree out. Take something to cover the bottom part of your pot, you know, whether it be burlap or something gauzy. There's some black mesh you can buy that we get at Tractor Supply. And you can buy it in different sizes. Kind of like plastic mesh. But we put that over our trees when we transport them. So we have to load them back up. And then we tie them down, because don't let them bounce. And then you put the black mesh over, you tie them down again. That keeps them from actually getting too dry. We water them really, really thoroughly before we transport them. And then we water them just as soon as we get them in the ground. So minimize the amount of stress that the tree actually has. So, and when you grab them, don't grab them by this part up here. I mean, if it's a tree, grab them by the pot, because if you just grab them by the base of that tree and you're rocking it around like that, it's not good for the tree and you're going to end up snapping it. Or you may end up actually causing it to have cuts and everything else in it, and that's going to make it where pests and disease get in those little tiny cuts on that tree. I've seen a lot of people plant trees and then take the shovel and do this, and then they scar up their tree. Well, don't do that either. So, but be careful with the tree. Treat it like you would like to make sure that, you know, you treat your little baby at home. You take off his diaper, put the new one on, don't scratch up the baby, don't make him cry. Same thing. So. And we do that. We always talk about time to load the babies. Preparing the planting site. What's the first thing you need to think about when you're thinking about a site? Anybody know? Shade or sun? What else?
Power lines underground and maybe wires overhead.
Yeah, be sure to call 811 before you plant a tree. We've cut cable before. What'd you like? Yeah. Enough space? Okay. What about pH? Did you do a soil check? Before you plant a tree, make sure the pH is correct for whatever species of trees that you're going to put in that spot. If you do not have the right pH, the tree will not live. Million houses I've gone to by now in the last 11 years, my tree has died. This is the 4th time I've planted a tree in this spot. Let's check your pH. And a lot of times it's acidic, and trees don't like very acidic areas. Now, if you would talk about, you know, oil or something else, that's different. But, you know, most of these people are trying to plant a dogwood or a tulip poplar, or, you know, and they have to have the right pH. So when you go to Lowe's, there's a little tag on there. Make sure you read the tag. Is it like sunny spots? Is it like semi-shade? Is this an understory tree? I love the people that buy dogwood and stick it right in the middle of an open field, and you're going to make it live. Yeah, I want to see that happen. Most of the dogwoods I've actually seen that were planted here were just part of an old forest system in Clarksville, and they moved all the trees away from it, or they died, and that's why some of the dogwoods are left. But yeah, just make sure that you know what kind of tree you're planting. Get the pH straight. You may have to do some soil amendments when you're actually doing it, but make sure that tree actually lives, because you know trees are expensive now. What's the ones at Lowe's? About $30-something right now just for a shade tree. Little spindly things. I'm not trying to be rude, but I wouldn't buy trees from Lowe's. I wouldn't buy from Home Depot or any place else. If you can't go to a reputable nursery to get a tree that is in good shape, that has one central leader, that is very beautiful, don't. Lowe's, they're like seconds, you know. They're okay if you really want to fool with them. I mean, sometimes that's, you know, all people can afford, but try to get the bang for your buck. Get a better tree.
Send us a lot to do pH tested, or do you do any of those little home testers? Do they work?
You can send it off to UT Extension, a couple of samples, or you can do like I do. If you got a couple $100. You can buy the cheap model. Check the pH. Is it right? Yeah, it's okay. $10. Or you can buy this little next guy, which I love. This is a Killebrew soil tester.
No, the other guy had that.
I love it. Before you put it in the ground, take the paper that's coming with it, run it around, get the all cleaned up, get it ready, put it in the ground for a few minutes. And it goes from 3.5 to 8, and will also tell you if the area is wet. But you'll have to stand there and wait a little bit. And it takes about 2 minutes for it to tell you exactly what the correct pH is for that area. Killebrew, K-E-L-W-A-Y, soil tester. I think they've gone up since I bought this one. This one was $120-something. I think they've gone up to $150. Cracked the glass a couple times on this one. Don't leave them in the truck when it's really, really hot. Let's see them now. Be very careful with your Killebrew. Make sure you put it up when you're done. Don't let it be jogging around in the back of your truck, because you will break it. They're tough, but they're sensitive too. But I use that to tell the pH. For my grant trees, for my tape, I just go ahead and take some soil samples. Have y'all done soil samples? You know, soil samples? Talk about it? Yeah. I'll just go ahead and do the soil samples and send mine to the UT Extension, because I want an official report to go along with my grant. And, you know, the state likes that. So I'll do that. When you're planting individual plants or trees, make sure that when you plant the hole, after you make sure all the pH and everything, make sure the hole isn't too deep. A lot of people will get out there and I mean, they're just digging a china, you know? The hole does not need to be deeper than the tree and the root ball. You know, I'll get some new guys working with me every now and then. I mean, I say, are you done yet? You know, you're gonna have to put that half of that dirt back on there. You mean I've been digging all this for nothing? Yeah, because you weren't listening to me, number one. I said, so I generally take my shovel and I'll gauge the how big the root ball is on the tree. And then when I get my hole just right, I can usually take that part of the shovel that I gauged the root ball with, and I know that I'm planting it just right. You can slope the sides of the hole too. You're going to want to make sure that the new feeder roots get the top 12 inches. And they got most of them to grow. We got really high content clay soil. My guys, when we do the big stuff, we pull out the big guns. We take the skid steer, we put the great big thing on the big spade on the front of it, and we drill that. We tend to glaze the hole, but because it's spinning so fast, it's what glazes it. So we've got to come back with a shovel and we've got to chip the glaze off that hole. If you don't chip the glaze off the hole, when you plant it, your water is going to be standing there and the tree will rot. So make sure that your hole is not glazed. Sometimes you can do it with a shovel because of the high clay content. But make sure that, you know, it doesn't turn into a waterproof barrier, whatever you do. Here's a picture. I'll say it's about, let's pretend it's a 2 caliper tree. 2 caliper means 2 inches. That's what we're required to actually plant for the city is a 2 caliper tree. That's a pretty good sized tree. You can either get them a container or I get them ball and burlap, B&B. And I actually have to get quotes from people in McMinnville to actually get these trees. I have bought local, but it seems like some of the growers here that are local don't grow them like they're supposed to. There are ANSI standards for growing trees per ISA. I don't know if I'll talk to you about that or not. There are rules and regulations for growing trees. And so we try to make sure that we do all the rules and regulations. And when you do that, the trees look better. They're disease-free, they're pest-free, they look good, they've got a strong central leader on them. And they're gonna have a good start, is what I always say. There's all kinds of, man, McMinnville's just full of those. I just send them off to just different and see who's gonna give me the best quote. But I've generally talked to the nursery person first. I've gone to McMinnville a couple of times when nobody's answered me and rolled through the gates. I'm like, hey, look, I sent you a quote. Oh, I'm sorry, forgot about it, you know. I don't have any favorite because most of the ones in McMinnville know what they're doing when they're growing their trees. Let's see, this is about October, November. Last of October, November, they're going to start digging trees. So you're going to see trees everywhere. So they'll start wrapping them up. The one's container will be shipped out and they'll be ready for planting. Make sure you don't plant your tree too deep. If it does have burlap, rope, and a wire basket off it, take it off. You cannot leave a wire basket on a tree and expect it to live.
I have a question. I'm sorry.
Yes, go ahead.
What are you speaking of, McMinnville? What is that?
McMinnville, Tennessee. That's where they grow most of the trees around here down south.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
And if you go to McMinnville, by the way, and you go get your tree, it's a whole lot cheaper than if you let them go through a grower and it gets up here. You just have to have.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. If you go down to Liberty Park and you look at some of the trees, they've been there 20 plus years. They hadn't grown. They look horrible. They're still the same size they were when the contractor planted them. They haven't got a whole lot taller or a whole lot wider. And everyone that's died and we've pulled it up has got the burlap on it and has got the wire still on it. I have got a picture in my office and I should have had Paul put it on here. It's how to plant a tree. and the tree's burlapped, it's sitting on top of the dirt, and it looks like somebody took about 3 shovelfuls and put it right there, and just left it sitting on top. And I'm like, that ain't gonna work. So you gotta take off the burlap. Why? Because burlap acts as a wicking agent.
Right.
And it will take all the moisture away from the tree and send it out to the air everywhere. So you've got to get that burlap off. You've got to take the cage off. If you don't take the cage off, the roots will just spin round and round. And eventually it will kill that tree. It'll girdle that tree. You can have a tree kill itself with circling roots. And those roots need to go out. And if they're circling, that tree's just gonna sit there and it's gonna rot. And it's gonna stay wet with circling roots, and it's, it's not good for the tree, and it's bad practice. ISA, NC states, in their stuff that, remove the burlap. The state, Tennessee Agriculture Department, remove the burlap. If you want a good tree to grow, we get the root flares in the ground, the roots in the ground like they're supposed to, and that tree to be sturdy where that wind doesn't blow it over, you're gonna need to make sure that happens. You can add some backfill if you don't have enough soil. You should have enough soil by the time you put the tree in there, and that's why I don't understand a lot of times, because like, how much more soil do we need? Well, by the time you dig out the hole and you put the tree in there, you're gonna have extra soil. So what am I gonna do with it? That extra low spot over there in the grass is where I'm going with it. I do kind of leave it raised up a little bit because the moisture will pack that soil down. So I'll leave it a little bit there. You can stake it the way they're doing it if you really want to. Just remember, if you stake a tree, don't leave it like that. Don't walk off for the next 2 years and leave that tree like that, because that's gonna grow into that tree. It's gonna kill it. Right. There's a lot of people that I've seen, what's wrong with my tree, and I looked down and I go, I can't get that out. Try to cut it out, but the rest of it's still stuck in the tree. It's bad for the tree. Yes.
So you don't mix anything else with the soil?
It's plain old Tennessee soil. Why do we,
That's
you
it.
can if it's really, really, really clayey and rocky. You can do some soil amendments. I just do some garden dirt
What if
that you
it's
buy.
wet? What if it's really wet?
What if it's really wet? I planted trees in mud.
Yeah.
It was fixing to get really, really cold last year. We had these tech grants sitting there, and I told my guy, when I got there at about 5:30 that morning, I said, how you feeling? And he said, oh God, what are we fixing to do? I said, you about ready to plant 50 trees? And he said, sure, why not? I got told, whenever. We planted 50 trees in 50 days was 6 people. It had rained, the holes were full of mud, and I'm up to here in mud. We're filthy. But they were in the ground, they're good, they made it, but it was fixing to be a really good freeze, and I didn't want them sitting out, even though we had them covered with mulch, because it wasn't gonna be good for them. It was gonna be way too cold, and there was no way I could keep them that warm and keep those root balls from getting freeze. So I just opted to plant them that day. So
So
we started,
I
yes, ma'am.
how much would you charge to come here on the 1st and help me plant my trees?
I can't do that. That would be a conflict of interest, and they might fire me.
Oh,
But I know some people.
oh yes, I need
Send
that.
an email. I'll share with you some people that might be able to do that for you.
Yay, thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. When you graduate this class, you can get a whole bunch of master gardeners to come help you.
Yay.
No?
But after you get the tree in the ground, make sure that it's not too high and it's not too low. Make sure to mulch the tree. And like I said, don't volcano mulch it. Let's see. And if you want to, like I said, you could do those stakes, or you could just go to Bill's Wholesale down on Craft Street, and you can actually stake those root balls with about 3 good stakes. Like I said, just shove them diagonally where they catch the corners, not close to the trunk, and just tack them into the ground. It's just like putting a push pin in a board. It just holds that tree down. Just like that.
I'm sorry, I have another question. I thought you said don't use stakes, you use wood.
Yes.
Pieces from
Like
co-op. Which
wooden
one
stakes.
is it?
We use wooden stakes. We buy them at Bill's Wholesale, and they're short. They're only 3 foot and we tap them into to the bottom part of the root ball, into the soil.
Okay, okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
the big tall stakes tend to get in the way and people forget to get about them, or they'll tend to ride the stakes and tear up the tree. We got all kinds of weird stuff going on. How come you can't see that part? Oh, you can see that part. Okay. Remember when you plant a tree that the roots come out to the edge of the canopy. If you were to take that tree, pick it up, turn it upside down, the roots will always come out, sometimes past it. Those are your feeder roots. Don't cut into it because you'll ruin your tree. Here's a proper hole that was dug. It is shallow and wide rather than narrow and too deep. It's got plenty of room around the base, around the sides to actually, for the roots to actually start coming out. It looks like a cryptomeria. And it's perfect. Just don't put the dirt in yet. You want to make sure you remove all the wire, all the burlap, everything else, but the hole is just perfect. This is planted wrong. What was left? Burlap, the rope still hanging around the tree. Yep, the wire's probably still on it. Yeah, that's a mess. And it's not gonna make it. And whoever threw the mulch just threw it on there. This is why planting depth is important. Make sure you identify the flare at the base of the tree where it just starts to get a little bit bigger. That's the part that you actually want to make sure that you get even with the ground. Because those roots on that trunk flare are going to spread. And that's what's actually going to hold that tree into the ground. What's wrong with that one over there to the left? A little too high. If they went just a little bit deeper, it would have been perfect. But make sure you identify where your trunk flare is. You will get them from different growers like Lowe's and Home Depot that have just jammed them in the pot and they're too high there or they're too deep. But you've got to go through, remove that soil a little bit, identify where that's at to actually make sure you can put it in the right spot and the right level.
So what happens if that happened because of erosion, because of a flood or, the soil?
That's just plain neglect. That's too high.
Right.
This one's done a little bit too low. This is rot. This one though. That one there, it still needs to go a little bit deeper. You're gonna have those surface roots that are gonna actually happen, and I've seen this in people's houses. Once those surface roots get going across the ground, then people forget and they take their mower and they go across and try to mow the grass. Well, what happens to the surface roots in the tree?
Yeah.
They cut them.
Yeah.
I went out to a lady's, I think those trees were 30-some-odd years old. And she says, what can I do for them? And I'm looking at them and I was like, not a thing. I said, because they're going to die. You have cut through every root on this tree. And she said, well, my husband, she said, is ex-military and he likes that, I was like, I will tell you, I mean, you can see the visible holes in the roots because the roots, one root was like this big around and she just sliced it off. So that tree was stressing out and that's why it was losing all its leaves. That's why it was just, looking horrible and it was turning yellow. It was chlorotic too.
So with those exposed roots, we can just put it up so
You have to be very careful how long you do that. You have to do it in increments. And you're gonna want to mix a little perlite, a little sand, and a little garden soil together, and just do it a little bit at a time in increments to get that soil back up where it belongs. A lot of homeowners don't understand. Don't mow under your tree. If you want to save your tree, don't mow under it. Plucks the soil off of it. You've got the mowers now. The RPMs on these new mowers are so fast and they're so powerful. You're just taking and you're just blowing all the soil off the trees. If you just kind of get to the edge of a tree and you can get a weed eater or something and go underneath that tree with a weed eater, just, get it down just enough where, you can handle it. Because, there's nothing wrong with leaving a little grass. And actually the grass holds on to the soil. So, and you'll get a lot of people on, but go down to Heritage Park. Go down to the islands down in the middle of the park and tell me what's wrong with every single tree. there's no soil. There's exposed roots everywhere because they use the really big skags. They mow around the trees like I tell them not to. And of course, this is before my time. That's 25 years ago when those trees were planted. And then they're wondering how come the trees are dying. Well, they're exposed. All the roots are. And instead of going and actually, building back up and then maybe putting some type of, maybe some type of native plant or something there to actually hold the soil that they don't have to take care of, or some grasses or whatever, they just keep mowing it, Here I'm trying to green infrastructure and they keep mowing it.
I've seen
Okay.
where, some towns, they're planting a tree and then they put those plastic, like, I don't, what it's made
Talking
out
about the
of.
tree wells.
Yeah, and it's got holes in it, is that for drainage, or does that
Uh-huh.
hurt the tree, or?
There's actually, if you do it right, and do a street tree the correct way with the correct, insert the tree should actually go into, then that tree should live a whole lot longer and a lot better than what it does. But downtown Clarksville, those inserts were not put in, so we're just working with a big concrete hole. That's all we've got. I don't think that the money was there, and I don't think the knowledge was there 25 years ago when they started to decide to put street trees in. And even though I have fussed and, I'm not gonna get that kind of money. You're talking roughly several $1,000s per street well. Yes.
If you don't have a background, you drop it all into the flower track. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's okay. I just don't mow around trees. I've seen it, like I said, go to Heritage Park and look at the devastation on the trees. That's constant mowing with a high powered mower. I know time is of the essence, and they don't have a lot of time, a lot of parks throughout. And some of the streets, some of the islands there too, they blow the, do we go in and amend it? If we have to, we do, because at that point it becomes a trip hazard. And then it's a safety issue. I know probably y'all got grandkids that play soccer or whatever. I think Carl's kids have. And I've gone in there and added soil to some of the trees before because they had gotten to be such a big trip hazard. And the kids were, little kids are running around trees, right on their face, that's what they do. I mean, we did it when we were little. We didn't think anything about it. Chasing each other. Kids do that. They're supposed to. But, at that point, the safety guy steps in. We've got great safety guys with the city now. And they're like, hey, you need to come out here and remediate this problem, or they're going to cut your tree root off. Well, I'm like, don't touch the tree root. I'll be out there and we'll fix it. So we go in and we amend that soil, and we actually add it increments to actually get back where it's supposed to be, make it where it's less of a trip hazard.
So I have a question again, two things. So you're saying if you have a tree in your yard that the root system, how a tree, the roots start spreading all over the ground and stuff, and there's no dirt on it, you can see the roots and you can see them spreading. You're saying we should cover with some soil or dirt and not cut over them?
Right. You want to get that dirt level back up where it's supposed to be around those tree roots.
Okay. And the second thing, you said something about don't let nobody top your tree. What do you mean? Like the tree, the branches are, the canopy on is too low and needs to cut. It's too low and it's too close to my home, so I need it trimmed. So so you're saying I shouldn't do that, or?
Just don't let somebody come through and just top your tree. Topping just means that I'm going to come through with a chainsaw and I'm going to top it, just one great big swath.
Oh, no.
And
Okay.
I'm
Okay.
going to make your tree look ugly. Let's put it that
Oh,
way.
no. Okay. I understand now. But
And for some reason, ugliness starts a trend. And I've noticed that when one person does it, that person does it, all down the neighborhood. I don't know why people like ugly. I've never understood it. Why you want to kill your own tree?
right.
Why
But
you cost all that money?
but it's okay to trim some of the branches that are, it's too low and it's hanging.
Yes, as long as
okay.
as long as you do it correctly and do lateral prunes, and find an arborist that actually will do it correctly, you're okay. But you just don't whack them off at random parts.
Okay.
And every tree is different. Pin oaks are different than regular oaks, or maples are different. I mean, the pin oaks at, Patriot Park. I had some guys going through there and they were just blocked. You know, you can't do it, you can't, and you've got to be careful because a lot of those trees, the understory goes down on a pin oak instead of up. So you have to make sure that what we were doing out here, make sure to find a note and make them go back up where they're supposed to. If not, they'll just keep going down. And, pin oaks and willow oaks are probably the biggest offenders on that. Not a great big fan of pin oaks and willow oaks. They're sturdy. They don't have a problem with salt. They'll be here till, you know, the end of time, I think, but they take a little bit of care. So. Any tree. Right, but you still don't top it. Right, but you still wouldn't top a fruit tree either. Yeah, you just don't take one just right across it. You need to make sure that you do it where it's correct. And I think you'll go over that. Or haven't you been? Peace trees. Yeah, that's a whole different thing. Bonsai's a whole different thing. Yeah.
There's a little bit in this slide section about, trees and fruit trees, but yeah, we'll have one.
So when you're also digging your hole after you've had the pH test and everything else done, sometimes you're gonna have a poorly drained soil. It's not gonna be really great. How you find out this is poorly drained is just, I do it, get your 5-gallon bucket full of water, put it, dump it in that whole big bowl, figure out how long it takes for that water to drain out. If it takes a really, really long time, maybe that's not the best place to put, you know, your tree. Maybe you need to go higher ground or spot your yard. I live in Kentucky now, and we've got a completely different type of soil than what Clarksville does. I was so used to the clay, rocky stuff, and then I got there, and of course, it was springtime, and the ground was wet, and I was like, oh boy, I could take a whole shovel, I can just dig to China. Yeah, and then we had a drought, and it just went tink, and that was cement at that point. So Tennessee still got the best soil, I think, even though it's rocky and clay. Because that whitey stuff looking up there, when it gets dry, it's done. You ain't putting the first tree out. I don't care if flower or whatever it is, unless you're going to water it site for a day. And we also have we're right next to a creek, and we're on the low water table. When my husband moved me up there, I did not realize that the water table was lower in some parts of Kentucky. There was a big rain. It rained for 2 weeks straight. I come home one night late from work, and I could see things crawl. And I was like, what is this? So I get out of the car, and I'm looking, and it's crawfish that are coming out of the ground. And I mean, these guys are this big. So I picked 2 up, and I go in the house. I'm like, where did we lose 2? What are these things doing in my yard? These belong in Louisiana, you know? I did. I got a picture with a stick of bubble gum next to one. It was way longer than the stick of bubble gum. Yeah, I was like,
Dinner, honey.
there are little chimneys everywhere, you know. I was like, what in the world? I'm great for bass fishing, you know, because I like to fish, but I have never seen such in my life, you know. They're just crawling over what? Hundreds of them. I've never seen anything like it. So moving to Kentucky was interesting. Let's see. You can kind of pick the roots, the whole tree up, kind of move the roots high enough that the water drain away from the roots. Make sure you still cover the root ball with mulch though. I don't like it. I generally put it somewhere else. But I mean, this is, you know, there are some trees that like to be wetter than others, and that's where you got to do your research. I've got a spot out at Station 11 Fire Station that I got to put some trees at. I've got an area that stays wet. I got an area that stays dry. So I got a whole book, and I spend days going through this book. Okay, is it a good site? Does it get enough sun? If you don't know how to calculate your sun and how much you get during the day, there is an app. It's called Sun, SUNCALC, Sun Calc. And you can put it up on the computer. There's an app on you can put on your phone. put in your address, it'll show you how much sun you get per day, for the year, it'll do the whole rotation for you. And that way you can also figure out what kind of tree you want to. When I found it, I was like, I love this. NRCS, if you want to know what kind of soil you have, go to the soil, what's it called? Soil survey, and you can pull up what kind of soil you have. And by looking at that soil survey before you even get in the ground, you can pretty much tell if it's going to be wet or if it's going to be dry or too loamy or too sandy or whatever it is, if the builders haven't ruined your backyard. Most of the time what happens if you get a new house, you're not going to have any topsoil. They're going to put maybe 12 inches back, and that's all you get. Because they steal your topsoil and they sell it for a couple $100 a load. I think it's $3.86 a load right now. That's what it's going for. My husband steals topsoil. Yeah, me and him have words. Like, where'd you get that from? Oh, well, it's a subdivision. Yeah. He's got to make $1. Everybody's got to make $1. I get it. But you know how long it takes to actually fix the soil in your yard? Ask Carl. Years and years and years. Yeah, to get that soil back where it actually, because you're not gonna be able to grow grass, you're not gonna be able to grow trees, not until you get your soil back. So you're gonna spend a lot of time working on your soil, adding sand amendments, adding, you know, whatever amendments you can for your yard to get your stuff to grow. So, and that's just something they do. When we started letting contractors build houses in Clarksville, that's when it started happening. If you can get a hold of an old house, you know, built in the 50s, 60s, and early 70s, I think in 72 was when you didn't have to be a master carpenter, is when they turned that off. Back then you had to be a master carpenter to build a house. Now, anybody can do it. But if you can get an old house, they got good bones, you'll have good soil out backyard. I promise you. Let's see. We kind of talked about this one already. How you like them wires? Hold a tree up. Piece of rubber hose. Does it work? Yeah, it works. You're gonna have to mow around it or weed eat around the stakes. The mulch looks like a donut. It's done right. See how they pulled it back away from the bark? That's done correctly. The staking was done correctly, but you could probably do that better, you know, if you just had a couple of stakes, wooden stakes, you just put them into the bottom, then you wouldn't have to worry about going back and checking your stakes and your wires and making sure all that doesn't actually hurt the tree. I've got so many trees that I found when I first started working for the city that somebody had walked away, and the tree grew up and they put the stakes so close to it. We have removed a couple and bought brand new saw chains and ruined a $32 chain in an instant. Because you get to it, ting, and you get a great big spark, and it's like, what was that? Because they just let it grow into the tree, and then the tree dies. So then we got to put the tree back. So try not to use those if you can actually help it. I mean, if you can, I mean, if you just what you want to do, go ahead. But I like the little bitty stakes.
What is your take on the mulch? I know you said you use chip, but a lot of people are using red, brown, and
Depends what color you like.
deteriorate.
I just use regular brown mulch because I got this thing. If you're gonna dye my mulch, then you're putting something, my tree's gonna drink whatever it is you put in there. Right. Whether it be red, whether it be black. And you can put black down because we've done it, but in 6 weeks it's brown because all the dye's out of it because it's rained and it's brown mulch again. So why not just make it cheaper on yourself and just get brown mulch? I mean, if you like red, that's fine. I don't advocate for rock around tree. That's what I'm dealing with around fire departments. This particular rock is actually, looks like somebody has actually splayed the lie around here because they're too lazy to pull out a weed eater. I'll say that. I've been lazy. But I don't put any glider on my roots. Don't. I don't like the little metal band to hold the rock in. I should just left it alone. Just put regular brown mulch in it, walk away from it. But the rock actually heats up the tree. And if you look, it's got damage here, or it actually's got sun scald. It's like it popped open. It's like sun scald. So it's like if you go out into and you don't have the appropriate SPF on, so what's gonna happen to you? You're gonna burn. That's pretty much what's happened to the tree. What do you think happened to the side? Notice it's missing some stuff.
In that case, we can just use it, like, protect it from the sun.
You could put latex paint on it. I've seen a bunch of people do it. Looks like if the wind got the glide, push it over the tree. That's why it's missing leaves on the inside. That's what I think happened. Now, it may be just dying because, it doesn't like the heat. But I would say whoever put this glide on here, the wind caught it, blew it up in the tree. I see that a lot.
There was also a weed-bearing fabric.
Oh, yeah, I see it now. Yep. Landscaping fabric, I do not like. I have tried landscaping fabric. If you're gonna do it in like something that's got something permanent in it, that you're not gonna put anything else in it, I mean, that's fine. I don't put them on any of my trees because I don't think the water permeates landscaping fabric. Not like it's supposed to. My husband's grandmother, she wore landscaping fabric around her peonies because she got tired of weeding. Okay, I didn't like it, but I put it down there for her. And that lasted a year, and I think last month I snuck out there when it was dark and I took it all out. Because the peonies looked like crap. I mean, they did. It was the worst I'd ever seen, and she can roast peonies. But I could see where they were starting to yellow and they were starting to decline, they were more drier than what they were supposed to. And I snuck out there, took off the mulch, shook it out, pulled out the landscape, put it in the trash bag, and I put it in the trash can, and I took it to work. And if she ever asked me, I'm like, I don't know what happened to this stuff. But her peony started looking better after that. And I think it's been about a month and a half. But and I watered them during the drought and everything else, but I think they look a whole lot better than what they did. I just don't think the water gets through it. And when I picked up the landscape fabric, there was no critters, no worms, no nothing underneath there. Dry as a bone. It looked horrible. It looked like a barren desert, is what it looked like to me. But I pulled back some mulch of that. I got worms. I got all kinds of activity going on with everything that's supposed to be happening. And it looks great. But I don't like rock. Like I said, it heats up plants and makes them hot. Yes, ma'am.
What the little mulch ring things that they were out those?
They're okay. They're mulch mats. If you want to spend $12 on one, you can. I looked at one. It looks like the water goes through it. It's got enough holes in it. It's just like a permanent ring. It's okay.
Did you pull it further away from the base?
Yeah, I mean, it's got a slit in it.
Right.
Yeah, and you could just pull it away from there if you want to. And it's got a perfect ring in the middle, so yeah, you're gonna have plenty of space. It's okay. I've seen the smaller ones and I've seen the bigger ones. They're not bad. I mean, if that's what you want to do and make it more permanent, you can. Does it hold the water down? Yeah, it holds the water down. Is it really pretty? But mulch makes compost. And that's what you want as much composted dirt as you can get underneath that tree. That's the nutrients. You want something to rot. It's just like your garden. You want enough compost on it. I like mulch. I don't mind replacing the mulch.
Does it matter if you what kind of mulch, like hardwood mulch versus pine?
Pine wood decreases your pH. You can put, I mean, it's up to you. I mean, to the owner. You can use wood chips. You can use pine bark nuggets. I don't use pine bark nuggets in areas that I have like conifers or something. I don't actually like to put them around the regular trees because it messes the pH up a little bit and makes it too. Yeah, it'd be good.
I have a question. Someone mentioned like shredded up boxes or something, moving boxes.
Cardboard.
Oh yeah, cardboard box. Sorry.
Oh, I'm a fan of cardboard. Matter of fact, I stick it underneath everything.
Oops, I'm sorry. Say that again. I had you on mute.
Oh, that's right. I put cardboard under everything. I take all the boxes at work and take them and break them down, stick them in the back of my truck, and they go in my garden.
Oh, nice.
Excuse me.
toxins that come from like the weeds that are.
That was what we were talking about today, in our class. What kind of toxins, what is the label on a box that can tell, that will tell you what kind of toxin it is? I'm not sure. I know some boxes have plastic linings. You don't want plastic in your garden. We were talking about coffee cups. Yeah, they're recyclable, but does anybody tell anybody they got plastic lining on the inside and how long it's gonna take for the plastic, to degrade before you can actually, chip that up and use it for something? No.
Actually,
What's-
there's a lot of dyes in the, cause they use these big tumblers to put the dye, on like a box of Fruit Loops. There's a lot
Yes.
of that. You wouldn't use a box of Fruit Loops.
Yeah, don't use
Dark.
anything with any printing on it, like she
Yeah.
said, Fruit Loop boxes. I use a plain old brown cardboard.
Yeah.
I got an uncle, he died of Alzheimer's. They think it was the inks in the boxes. He lives in Florida that he handled most of his life. Wasn't pretty. But the brown, I just take the brown boxes. I actually strip them up, put them up underneath my mulch. I'll come around the outside where I hate to take a trim, run them almost to the outside, and then I'll take mulch and put them around the outside. And then I don't have to trim as much. And they degrade, and the worms love them. For some reason, worms love boxes. And that's where I get all my fishing worms. Didn't do it.
What's the difference, what's your thought on, using pine needles versus mulch? I've heard people in their flower beds and gardens and.
Pine needles are great for stuff that likes likes the acidity. Like I said, your evergreens, your laurels, rhododendron, stuff like that. That's great. I have seen some people use it, when they're flower beds. It just takes pine needles an awful lot of time to actually degrade. That's it. Like I said, it's up to the owner. This takes pine needles are awful expensive, I found out.
Okay,
The last time I bought just one small bale of pine needles, it was $8. And you can go to Lowe's and get 3 bags of mulch for $10. So, I mean, it's,
right.
I mean, you gotta decide what you want. So, and Carla took a picture. I mean, here we go. I did not know you do this.
Demonstration.
Were we at Liberty? Yeah, we were at Liberty. But yeah, we were planting a tree that day, and it was in a container. And I think I had some people freak out when I took the edges right here, and I fluffed them up. I mean, I took a knife and I went through the sides, and I cut all that stuff off the sides, and I got all the feeder roots dislodged. Because once you get them in that hole, you actually want those feeder roots to spread out. And if not, they'll just keep going around and around. Yeah, but you got to free the feeder roots. I haven't heard that one. That's new. Yeah. I hadn't heard that one. That's new. So, yeah, we were doing a demonstration today, how deep to dig your hole, how wide to dig your holes, and what all you needed for it. I had all my water prepped and everything else. That tree's still alive, by the way.
Yeah, that's one for a wacky thing. My email about wacky things.
Yeah.
Slowed down for the year, but next year it's going to get out of March, which is at lunchtime or replanting or something.
Yeah, and I just got done with Tree Tuesdays today, because Carla has so much education she has to do, and I have so much education I have to. She has to get certified for, what was it, UT Extension? Anyhow, I gotta do the Tree City USA, and I have to do a growth award for Clarksville. We're in our 19th year for the growth award, and I have to do so much continuing education. So I'm always doing continuing education across Clarksville to make sure we're in compliance with that growth award. among a billion other things. And then we've got actual Tree City USA. 32 years now? Was it 31? We're fixing to change the number. But that's the reason we're actually having our Arbor Day celebration next month, whatever day it was. It's on a Monday, it's after school break. And it's gonna be at Clarksville High. We'll be celebrating our Arbor Day, and we have to have the celebration along with the pictures to turn into the state to say, yes, we planted a tree. Yes, these people were here. It's a pretty big thing. We have to have all our credentials in place to actually be able to get our award each year. So that's what we do. Let's see. Dylan up here at the top, he's my helper. He's been with me almost 8 years. I call him the tree hippie. He's good. He can dig a hole fast. And we're just basically showing the depth of that tree and do we have it correct? It looks like we had it correct. We put it in, we put the mulch on top, we're spreading it around. And Dylan's looking at us like we're crazy. And looks like we did a good job. And the tree's still alive. And that was last year. You can get the tree through the first year, you're doing good. So if you can't get a tree through the first year, yeah, you're that includes potted babies. How many areas do we spot in that diagram? What's wrong with it?
Where they stay, like wires.
It's got wires on it. Holes too big. Holes too deep. They loosened up the soil on the bottom and mounded it up. It's still gonna sink.
Oil line's not at that neck.
The guy wires don't have any type of, well, there's a hose up there. Original soil. I think most of the guy wires. And then it was planted too deep. And they made saucers so the water could stand on top of it. You don't want water to stand. You want it to be able to roll off. When we plant the trees, we don't make it where the water sits right there. We don't make these little donut things. That's the whole reason for leaving the 5-gallon bucket on each side and pouring the water in a 5-gallon bucket. That way you don't leave that little hole and then your tree sits there and rots when it starts to rain like it did yesterday and today. Yeah,
You just level it off.
I just level it off.
You leave it, you bring it away from the trunk of the
Right.
a little bit and level off.
Yep, that's the best thing for it. And put the mulch on, call it that.
How do you determine how big the thing is?
You, root flare.
So if it.
Where's the root flare on this one? See that root flare right here? That root flare should be up here.
Because the trees that
Even-
you're looking at from the picture, you look like it was like established and bent. So then like the root flare is flush with the ground.
And there's a lot of established trees across Clarksville that have been planted too deep or too high. You talking about fruit trees or are you talking about your regular native trees?
Any tree that you.
Because the graft is different than the actual regular native tree. But you want to do it where right below where the graft starts. Right, like right where this little ball is, that's where you want to go with the graft. If you're not sure, take your shovel, lay it across the hole where you're planting the tree. And if that's not level with that shovel when you plant it, you ain't got it right. That's how we generally measure. So yeah, the hole's dug too deep, loose soil beneath the root mass, because you know what happens to loose soil, and that tree's still gonna sink. That's one thing that's wrong with it. Truck flares, below soil grade, I'm sorry, what?
I would think the contractors that are building all these houses, put the trees in, that they would have to find out what the city rules and compliance and.
Regional Planning Commission does have rules and compliances where green infrastructure is, but they don't pay any attention to it. And there's not enough detail in there to get people to understand how to plant their trees. And you get people, the developers, they've never planted trees before. That's not something they do. They generally actually, second party it out, hire a landscaper. And there'll be some fly by the night landscaper, that's happened before too, and they plant them all. And, they're not done right then either. So if you're gonna get you a reputable landscaper, you know, make sure you do a little background. Say, hey, maybe most of them should have a portfolio saying, this is what I did. This is the yard I did, this is where it's at. You know, if they don't have a good portfolio or something to show you their work, I wouldn't be hiring them. Not me personally. Yep, the guy wires is shown strung too tightly. You do want to make sure, I forgot to add, that if you put guy wires on a tree, you want to let it sway. Because that tree's not going to get any strength, if you don't let it sway a little bit. It's got to be able to hold itself up. A lot of people make them just as tight as they do, and when they take them off, the tree does this. Well, you know, if you put guy wires in yours, you're going to do that too. That tree's got to be able to stand on its own. If it doesn't, I'm bad about it. I'll go in, I'll shake trees. I'm a tree shaker. And if I go over and that tree isn't shakeable where it stands up by itself, you know, but I don't put guy wires on that. So, if whoever knows the people at the service station at the corner of, right across from the co-op, what's the name of that service station? If anybody knows who owns that, please tell them to take the guide wires off the trees. I stood up there one day and I was like, what if the camera's on? Do I take one of them off? I wanted to so bad. They've been there for years and they're starting to grow into the trees. And I said something to the guy that works there, and he said that he would test, and it's, you know, a year later, they're still there. So it's driving me crazy. But all the rope and everything has grown into the actual tree. And the trees are just crying, and I want to go save them, but you know, they're not my trees, and that would be overstepping my boundaries and they're fire. So, kind of will be here a little bit longer. I need to retire. I need a little money. But yeah, they've got wire those for forever, it seems, and nobody's paying attention to them. I don't understand. I've tried. It's about near impossible. Without tearing up and cutting into the tree, you just gotta let it stay in there and hope for the best. Yeah, just let it stay. Cut it off as close as you can get it without damaging the bark, and just leave it there. Let's see. Yeah, they mulched. Yeah, the mulch tree onto the trunk of the tree. That's bad for the tree. We don't do that. Volcano mulching.
I have a quick question. When you said that you moved and you take your trees with you, do you just uproot them even in their big
that was
age?
my potted trees. I had some potted trees.
Oh, okay.
I got them at sale before we moved, and my husband's like, "Are you gonna plant those trees and leave them for the next homeowner?" I was like, no, I took them with me. So, yeah, but yeah, I moved them with me. Let's see. Oh, and the tree's not protected from the guide wires too. You gotta have some type of protection. And it doesn't look like they put enough water hose or whatever it is on there to actually keep the rest of the branches from actually getting into the guide wires as that tree sways. Bed preparation, soil improvement, we kind of went over that, talking about make sure the pH is right. When you install groups of trees, shrubs, or flowers in a large space, prepare your soil uniformly instead of planting it into individual holes. I learned the hard way. I was like, I want blueberries. Went and got me some blueberries, shoved them in the ground, and about half of them died. And then I got to read the UT extension things on how to do blueberries. So I make mistakes too. And you need to prepare the bed just like you do your orchard. You know, I need to do a soil test, make sure my soil had the right pH, which blueberries like really acidic soil. And once I got that, and it took me a year to get it established. Grapes were the same way. It took me a while to get the area established for the grapes. Took a while. So, you know, if you are like most of us master gardens, we were going into Lowe's to the dead plant aisle. It's like, oh, I like that. I'm taking it home. My husband likes to murder me sometimes because you know how many plants I've got sitting waiting to be planted that I haven't done it yet in the backyard. He's like, but you got some. He's like, you didn't even plant them yet. And I'm like, do you know? And he's like, when? Yeah. Well, yeah, well, I'll get it planted. And then he's like, am I gonna get supper? No, I'm planting all these things you told me I didn't plant, so you're not getting supper tonight. You better go down to Farrell's and get you a burger or something. And bring me back one too, because I'm hungry. But yeah, preparation is everything. Just like when I do, repairing buffers. I had to repair them, actually rake through there, clean out all the invasives, to be able to actually put some good trees in there. Want to make sure you rake the soil surface. I mean, this lady here, she's really doing the bed up nice. And once you get all that regulated with your pH and make sure you get the right, then you can plant. But don't just go running out there. And Carla, we got a lot of people that's come from California for a while, and they think, well, California, we're gonna come in here. We got some property because they don't have a whole lot of property in California. My husband's grandmother's brother lives in California, and he has the postage stamp that he knows. It's worth $1 million. And he's like, I don't like it here. And he said, but I can't afford to move because I'm 80 some odd years old. We had one guy that works with us. He moved from California. I can't remember how much he got for his property. It was just little. It was astronomical price. But he came here, he's like, oh my God, this is the cheapest place in the world. He bought him a big house, he bought him 2 big trucks, he bought him this, he bought him that. And then his wife was like, I'm homesick. Packed up, went back to California. And then they realized that it wasn't what they thought they wanted, so they came back to Tennessee, and now they're so dirt poor they can't about make it. So he had to get another job to go on the job he's got. So yeah, just because you think you want to do something, sometimes it doesn't turn out that way. But now that she's got everything fixed and done, which is what you're supposed to do, then you can plant. Make sure your drainage is right, and everything else. Sometimes you'll need to add an organic matter. I don't add a lot of organic matter to any of my planting holes. I don't amend much of the soil. I like to keep the native soil that I've got, but if you have to put organic matter into a hole, make sure you mix it with the parent soil before you just put it in there. I've seen some people just throw the organic at the bottom and soil on top. That's not going to work. Mix it up. Make sure you mix it up really, really good, and then put it in there. Because it's not conducive to what you're trying to do if you don't mix it up. Like this lady here, she's just like pouring organic matter, around the side, and she's got all this red clay dirt. Oh yeah, it needs to be amended. That's messy. That's probably gonna hold water if she doesn't amend it. Organic, I'll go buy some garden dirt at Lowe's. I might mix a little organic matter, but I don't mix too often much because I want those roots to stay in that native soil. I don't want them to have all that fertilizers in that organic matter. I want them to stand on their own, do their own thing, and work on having that native soil, and work on actually making roots before it starts up in the tree, making leaves.
When you say you buy dirt at Lowe's, are you buying the bags of topsoil or
I buy garden dirt.
the garden dirt?
I like garden dirt.
Just the garden.
Topsoil is okay, and you can
Not
mix it with garden dirt.
not container, but,
Right. Not the container stuff. 'Cause
Yeah.
you don't want that.
okay.
Yeah, you don't want that. That's for containers on
Right.
the container plant. But yeah, you want something that's gonna go on the ground. Purchasing plants, shake the dirt off something you buy at Lowe's or Home Depot. I'm not being ugly about them. I'm just saying that they don't know, I went to Home Depot one day and I was looking at some fruit trees. I was looking at flowers and I kept looking at fruit trees thinking something was wrong. And sure enough, every one of them had a disease. And I had to go in there. I'm like, look, you need to pull the fruit trees off. They're diseased and we're going to have the rest of the trees being diseased. He's like, no, they're not. I'm like, yes, they are. You need to come look. And he had to pull every single tree off there because it was diseased. He didn't know. And unless you're a person that, this is your job or your business, I mean, and that's what you're looking for, which is what Carla's training for is master gardeners, you're not gonna know. But now that you have the wonderful knowledge that you're gonna have, you're gonna be able to go in there and you're gonna go, hey, I don't need that tree. And don't be afraid when you go look at a tree, pull that sucker out of the pot right there in front of everybody. look at it and go, that's not looking pretty good. Jeff, back to pot shooter, rub that on the shelf. That's not what you want. You're not gonna hurt anybody's feelings. You're gonna sell it anyhow. So the next sucker comes along. But if you do buy it, you're gonna have to work with that roof. So, that's up to you. You're gonna.
Tell that their sweet friends who needed to pay your.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Me and Carl's tapped on something. No, we don't want it. Clank.
you start watering their plants in the nursery and they're like, what are you
Oh,
doing?
yeah, they know me when I come in because, I'll have them work from here.
Yep.
Yeah. So, I'm like, what you got today? Yeah. They don't have to be pretty, but they do have to be maintained the way they're supposed to be. That right there, I would probably pulled it out of the pot a long, long time ago and I'd have done a root cream. That's probably another chapter. And then put it in a bigger pot. And, yeah, it needs a little help. And that tree is probably the most stressed out tree you've probably seen in your entire life if you ever got a chance to look at the top. But when you go out there and you're looking at it, pull it out of the pot, look at the roots. The roots don't look like, if they look like that, I wouldn't buy the tree. Inspect the top. If it's, top's looking chlorotic and it looks really, really stressed out, you don't have a central leader, don't buy it. I had, well, not naming this person, I had a grant, told this gentleman he was with a local company here in town that sold trees and bushes and stuff. And he got the quote for it and he brought me the trees and the bushes. And Dylan called my guy, he's like, oh, you need to come here and look at this. I was like, what? He goes, dang, you need to look at this. And I said, well, what's wrong? He goes, it ain't right. I said, okay, I'll be here in a second. Made it over to Heritage Park. And he had taken a 1 gallon tree, bush, whatever it was, and he pulled it out, took a 3 gallon, shoved it in, put dirt around it, and sold it to us as 3 gallon. That's still a 1 gallon. So make sure that you actually look at what you're getting because sometimes they'll do that without fluffing up the roots, without doing a root trim, without anything. And they'll sell it to you at a 3 gallon price, and it's a 1 gallon tree or bush. So you gotta be careful with that. And I told him, I said, until you bring me back my 3 gallons like you're supposed to, you're not getting your money. And I had his check stopped. And he was the maddest man I've ever seen in my life. And he wanted to know how I can make it right. And I told him, I said, go back and get the right ones. And I said, I can't do these. I said, because, that's not the right way to do it. And I'm not doing business. I didn't do business with that individual anymore. But he did some shady stuff. Yes. Yes, he was angry with me.
Two questions. One, how do you sell? Like I can speculate my mind just. And then two, how do you know that 1 gallon versus 3 gallon? Because it didn't fill out a 3 gallon.
Once you put it in that 3 gallon pot.
And like pull your flowers out and there's a lot of dirt.
Yes.
Sit thinking about how many times I do that into that's what she's talking.
And sold it
Instead
to
of
me at
pulling
a
it
higher
out and
price.
all being a ball.
Right. And you'll generally get that girdling root or that big mess right there. That's a lot of feeder roots. When I plant trees, and I've done it with the seedlings, and I put them in a pot. I start with a gallon pot, and I've got 1 to 5 gallon pots behind the shop. If I want to keep them longer because I'll give them to Girl Scouts and stuff, so they'll get their tree badge. And if they want a bigger tree, I'll make sure that I take that tree, I'll pick it up out of that pot, I'll trim the roots back on it, I'll fluff it up, I'll stick it in a bigger pot, and I'll put more soil on because I want those roots to get bigger, but I don't want them to go around. And that's what the nursery should be doing, but they're not pruning those roots like they're supposed to. And when they put it in a bigger pot, they're just shoving it in there and putting more soil on it. That's just making a bigger problem. They should be actually doing it the way they're supposed to. They want to make money off y'all. Y'all got, lots of money. And they want it.
So you're supposed to cut the roots every time you change.
Yes. That's another chapter. Yeah. I think Carl's might be right. We're cutting the roots, actually pruning back the roots to put in bigger pots.
We haven't really talked about it.
So, yeah. Now, this one here, if I want to do this one isn't bad. and I have had some like this, but I take something really sharp and I'll swirl it all the way around. The first time I did it, we ran a couple people, they like to have a corner. If you don't get those feeder roots fluffed out where they can actually dig into the soil and start feeding that tree, then they're just gonna keep spinning around. They're not gonna do anything. That one was left in a pot way too long. You'll make sure that you get those actually scored out all the way around. Make sure to do the bottom too, because a lot of people forget the bottom. Put it in the dirt, make sure to water it really, really good. And a lot of times too, whatever it is they grow them in, I ain't figured out what it is, some kind of fiber stuff that you'll get at the store. The potting, you ever notice it doesn't absorb water when you put it on the top, but if you like stick it in a bucket and put water in it, then it absorbs it from the bottom up. I don't know if y'all noticed that or not. I bought a bunch of stuff like that. I don't know what that fiber stuff is, but if you just can't water from the top and it get all the way down through the root ball, it just, because I pulled the root ball out, I'm like, it's still dry. So I'll put it in a bucket and or put a big pan up underneath it, leave it in the pot and let that water soak up to the bottom. Then after I've gotten it good and wet, then I can water from the top down if I need to. But once it's dried out, it's just hard to get the moisture back in whatever soil they're actually putting in there. Don't be afraid to cut any circling or girdling roots. These bigger guys right here. Don't be scared. You know, you're not killing the tree. It's gonna be okay. Get a sharp knife. Like I use a utility knife because I can change the blades out. And you can actually make 4 vertical slits. Rough it up a little bit, rough up there a little bit. Make it look like a wild person, and put it in the ground. And it works. You're helping it. You're not hurting it. Yes, there are. Whoppers have, I don't know if sight one's got one or not. The big spade that goes around. So, did anybody ever see the documentary on 9/11 when they planted the trees? If you haven't, you need to see it. I just recently got to watch it a couple of months ago, and Davy Tree got the job for doing it, and I did not realize how big a job it entailed. It was actually amazing, and they used the spades to actually plant the trees. There's, like I said, if you get a chance, watch the 9/11 memorial, where they actually put the trees in the ground. The way they actually structured it to hold the trees and to water the trees from the ground up was amazing. It was probably some of the best structure I'd ever seen to put trees in, because I mean this was all about the trees, because each tree was a memorial to someone. They actually couldn't find enough straight trees because they were going for the perfect trees. So they were knocking on people's doors going, hey, do you want to donate your tree to the 9/11 memorial? And they were like, yeah, you know. Then they were taking these trees back after they had spaded them out of people's yards and they started throwing them. And they put them in big, huge containers. Davy Tree did. These things were massive. Probably about half the size of this corner of this room. And they were actually had everything hooked up to them to actually feed and water these trees. And they kept them there for several years before they actually, that memorial site was done, and then they went and put them in the ground. But it's a very good story if you haven't had a chance to look at the documentary, and you actually get to see how they did it and some of the things that happened. Spades are awesome. They're very expensive. We don't have one. I wish we did. Well, they're not cheap.
I have a question.
Yes.
So when you're planting something huge like this, do they remove the burlap and the wire from these?
When they do the spading, what generally happens is there's a very large tree, like they can take a full-grown tree with this spade and they can move it. And what they'll do is about a week before, they'll irrigate that tree to make sure that it's has plenty of water to it. And then they'll actually spade it up. They'll move it and immediately plant it in the next hole that's already been dug for that tree. And like I said, these trees are enormous. But what they're wanting to do is they're wanting to preserve a larger tree instead of, cutting it down or let something happen to it. They've actually paid to move these trees if they're spading them up.
Okay, but I'm just wondering, did they like cut the burlap when it's
Oh, there's no burlap
planted?
on these. If they're doing the spading, these are just right into the ground. They're moving one tree. There's no burlap. There's no wire. There's anything. They're just picking the tree up once they spade it, and they're actually moving that tree.
Okay, but for the balled and burlapped plants,
Uh-huh. Well, if they're
Yeah.
using a spade and moving them that moment,
She's confused because the name of this law is B&B.
right?
That's why she's confused, thinking that those machines are used when the plant is falling and burning.
Now, there are some bigger ones that they will burlap, if that's what you're asking. But a lot of the ones that I've seen spaded, they just immediately plant those somewhere else. But yes, they can put ball and burlap on them.
okay, well, I'm just confused about if when you're planting something huge and it has burlap around it, how that's removed when it's planted.
Generally, very careful. Generally, most of the spading is done and they don't put the burlap around it because those spades are actually holding that dirt in. But if they're not ready for it, then they'll actually burlap it. Now, I have not seen that done, but it's a thing that they can do. I guess I would have to YouTube to see how they put the burlap and the wire on it. Be an awful lot of burlap, and an awful lot of wire.
Right.
There's a technique. But yes, before you actually planted it, which if you needed something that big to get that tree up, I don't think you and I are gonna plant that by ourselves, and we're not getting burlap off in the wire. It's gonna be whoever's moving those.
Okay,
Anything that's done that big is gonna require a lot of folks to move it. That kind of answer your question?
not really.
I'm sorry.
I'm just confused, what does balled and burlapped mean?
It's when you actually spade up the tree and it looks like a ball, and you actually burlap around that root ball is what you're doing. And then you add the wire on top to hold everything together. That's why they call it root ball and burlap.
Yeah, and so my question is, then, when you have the large ones that are wrapped in wire and burlapped, how is that removed before it's put in the hole? Just cut off?
It depends on the size of your tree. The trees that we have that are ball and burlapped are 650 pounds a piece. They require a skid steer with a something to hold the tree up. And then it takes two of us, one on each side, as we're hovering it over the hole to actually cut the wire off with a pair of lock cutters. That's how heavy the wire is. And then
Okay. Oh yeah, that was my question. Yeah.
Oh yeah. And then of course there's pins, or I should say nails in the burlap that hold it together and to keep it from falling apart. So then we've got a pair of pliers. We've actually got to go in there and pull the actual nails out. And then you have to be very careful to take the burlap off.
Okay, that answers my question. I was just looking at that machine, wondering if that like cut everything as it was going into the hole.
That's
But if
mostly
you
just used to spade out the hole.
right, okay, yeah,
Spade
I
around
get
the
it.
tree.
Yeah,
Okay.
I get it. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. And it depends on whatever kind of machine you're working with. That's commercial up top. That's big time. The way they do it around here is generally with one of these. That's how Minville does it. They've already got the wire and everything done, and they just plop the tree in there, and then they just seal it up and do their thing.
Okay.
So, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to be vague. Plain bare root plants. Roses, grapes, you know how you get them in Lowe's and everywhere, and they're just in a little sack and it looks spindly. If you're gonna pick one, make sure they're still moist. Don't get the dry ones, don't get the ones that look horrible. Don't do like I do and sit in the bag and put it in a bucket for 3 months. Make sure you have a place to put them. Make sure you've already got your site fixed out. Make sure your pH is done. When you're planting all those, bare root specimens, make sure to take all the plastic and everything else from around the roots. Recommend soaking them for 24 hours up before you plant. So just stick them in a bucket. Let them soak up as much water as you can, then put them in the ground. And then add another bucket of water. And then add some more soil, and then add another bucket of water on top to settle the soil. So, getting them started is the first thing. And it also depends on, selection too. When you're selecting a rose bush or you're selecting a grape, make sure that you know what you're looking for. No disease, no pests. Make sure that, it's nice and open and it is looking all crossed, and you've seen crazy roses.
So you know how Lowe's have those special sales in the back on this rack way in the back? All these
I
plants
love
look
that
like they're
rack.
dying and stuff.
I
So
call it the dead
it's
plant
not
aisle.
worth going and getting those then, huh? Or not?
I'm a big fan of them, but I tend to mother them to death before I get them in the ground.
Okay.
Yeah, if you can fix them and make them grow, by all means, be cheap. There was what was there the other day? I almost bought. There's a lot of perennials back there. Some of them were starting to look like they were dying. And but if you'd actually took, got them out of the pot, fluffed the roots out, put them in something else, gave them some better soil, trimmed them up, in a month they'd be ready to plant. For next year. So you can still be cheap. But you just
Okay.
gotta know what to do to the plant to actually fix it before you stick it in the ground. So yeah, I love the dead plant aisle. Pruning at time of planting. Carla prunes her orchard trees. It scares me to watch her. You have to. I never did it because I was too scared to. Carla just attacks it like somebody's vicious. I can't do it. Yeah, orchard, plants you can do that with, grape you can do that with, rose bushes you can do that with, not so much with trees. I don't like pruning our trees. The nursery's already pruned them anyhow, way before we got them. And half the time, they're burlapped, they're shipped, they're stressed out. So I just put them in the ground and I'll water. And I give them that weak fertilizer solution. And I don't touch those trees for 2 years. Matter of fact, I got some that I actually skipped that we planted 3 years ago. And I had to go back. They weren't pruned. They looked horrible when we got them, but there was nothing I could really do about it. It was an interesting situation. But I had to work with them this last week when I did my pruning class. And so I had to reshape the one because the sides were growing larger than the top. And so I had to trim those back because they were competing with the leader. And there was a lot of dead and dying in the middle, and there was a lot of crossing. So this was the 3rd year. So I really put those back. And I wished I took some pictures, but I didn't do it before and after. But yeah, they went from being pretty good size back to about this size. But I did lateral prunes. I didn't take off more than I should have. But I was trying to get that tree back to where it's going to grow like it's supposed to, because it was just growing all kinds of different funky ways, and it needed it.
What is the problem with the branches growing across each other?
When they start crossing each other, a lot of it keeps the sunlight from getting inside of it. You want to make sure that there's plenty of sunlight getting inside the tree as much as it can. And you've got so much auxin, which is the growth hormone that's actually making all the buds and everything else. You're going to get that. So what you've got to do is you got to go in, you've got to kind of play God, and you've got to make that tree. Now, in a real forest setting, a tree is going to do what it's supposed to. But when you just get them out where we have planted them, you got to kind of work with it. I bought some red maples. It's been about 2 years ago. And I like red maples, but I didn't realize when I planted them that I was going to be pruning red maples for the first 8 years that I had them. Every time I go on with a lawnmower, I would realize that if you prune again, that would be good. I worked with those red maples because red maples grow so fast and they get so wonky looking that I was constantly pruning back to try and make that correct form. They were making different branches and they were going this way. It took a long time. They look really good now, but you have to be a good tree warden and you have to make sure that you manicure. You're gonna cut your grass every day, so you must make sure you do your trees too. I get a lot
I
of.
have a I have a
Yes.
question really quickly. So I have two apple trees that I got from a nursery, and they're in like a pot. And so far, I have two of them. They're cross pollinate each other. They're about 2.5 years old. And I'm going to plant them into my yard at on the first around the 1st of October. But when it comes to pruning them, would you recommend pruning them at all? I'm so scared, but they have perfect, gaps, and they look like obviously they've been pruned, but it's just some of them do have those buds that try to grow like cross, in the center. And then
Right.
there are some leaves with like chew marks and holes in it and stuff. So it's like, oh, I'm so scared to like
Yeah.
mess it up.
It's definitely gonna need to be pruned, and you're gonna have to call Carla because it scares me.
Say that again.
I said, you're gonna have to print it, but you're gonna have to call Carla because it scares me to prune.
Oh.
I hate to do it, but I made the mistake and I planted 2 apple trees in my yard. It's been 4 years ago. I should have pruned them, yes, Carla. But I didn't. And now I'm gonna have to move them. And now I pruned them back and now I need to move them. And now they're getting too big, but yeah, I'm gonna have to do that for a winter project, dig them up and move them somewhere else. Because they're getting too big for where they're at.
Okay.
That was a fight between me and my husband. Tell me I couldn't put them where I want to put them. So I'm gonna put them where I want to put them. But definitely you want to remove your shoot tips. If you don't, from some of them, like I said, they get auxins in them and that tree will end up leggy on just a regular tree. Make sure you trim off broken and damaged branches from the tree when you plant it. Yeah, and even, if I see something damaged or broken, we'll prune it off. We're not perfect. We have damaged a couple of branches. We've kind of skinned up a couple of places on the tree. But we've monitored it. And as long as you're monitoring and you know you've done little boo-boos, you're gonna be okay as long as you're making sure you're still taking care of that tree. Proper application of mulch is important. Mulch also conserves water, maintains even soil temperatures, and you don't have to weed around the tree all the time. Make sure you put about 3 to 4 times the diameter root balls out for most plants. And it depends on how much you want. Some people come out more with their mulch, even though they have new trees and the tree's not very big. I like to come out with big circles. Because I don't want anybody doing anything around that tree for a while. I don't want a mower near it. Because if you don't come to the edge of that tree with that mulch, I'm gonna have a mower with what's that thing goes over the top? It's gonna scrape my tree and I'm gonna get angry. Or somebody's gonna come over with a string trimmer and they're gonna get near it and they're gonna scrape my tree. So I'll make it where it's pretty much bomb-proof. You can get the organic mulch, hold enough moisture to keep the bark continually wet, but it does cause bark decay. That's one of the reasons I don't put any type of organic type of mulch on there. I do just like just a regular bark mulch. Let's see. Yeah, if you get really, really deep, it'll limit the water air movement above the root system. So don't get it too deep, but don't, get it not enough. So you got to find that happy medium. And if you go through with a spade or shovel and kind of pull it back and you realize it's not staying wet up underneath it, maybe you've put too much, kind of remove a little bit. Something you got to kind of work with. And once you've done a couple hundred trees, you get used to it and you'll be like, yeah, that's what I want to do. This guy here, a little too much mulch. See what's going on with him? He's starting to get a little decay going on, looking a little funky right there at the very base. It starts to make the little roots come up, the root fibers. You see those feeder roots going down, they're starting to come up. And that's what's happened to most of the ones downtown around City Hall. All the volcano mulch makes them go up. They don't like that amount of mulch. Less mulch, but just enough. Watering. Make sure you water your tree. I got a lot of folks that they take the tree, stick it in the ground, and then walk off, and they're like, my tree died. Get your water. Well, I thought, Well, he's good at what he does, but you know, sometimes you don't get enough rain. So you're gonna need to water your newly set plants or trees or whatever for early growth and survival. You gotta make a strong root system. You wanna work really hard on that strong root system. But if you don't have good roots, you're not gonna have a good tree. Good rule to water is about 5 to 7 day intervals, enough water to soak the root ball. I like the 5-gallon bucket method because it's just so easy. Just stand over the water hose, fill up the 5-gallon bucket, and walk off. Like frequent watering is harmful because the soil stays moist, but the entire root system will not do. Don't go out there like my husband and grandma does, and you go, whoo, and then walk off. That did not soak the roots of any, the only things that didn't do anything that was in her, but she thought she did a lot that morning. And then I go behind her later when it's dark, I really water. She don't know it, but there's black hose snaking in through there, and so I just turn on the water system. She can't see it. But if you don't water them, they'll get a shallow root system. But you want a really good deep root system. It's kind of like grass. If you really like your yard and you like the grass in your yard, you're going to water for a long time to make sure it gets the optimum amount of water so the roots will go down, right? Same thing with the tree. Same thing with the bushes, roses, whatever.
I have a question.
Mhm.
Okay, a comment. I have a hydrangea bush on the side of my house, and it has grown. It's very pretty, especially when it first starts to bloom and stuff in the spring. It's huge now, so pretty. But when it gets really, really hot, the thing you're speaking of about putting a bucket on the side and let it sit about each side, would that help that to keep it water instead of me worrying about, okay, like you said, your husband would take a hose and try to think it's getting deeper. I'll take 2 buckets of water, pour it out there, but still seems like it's not enough. It stays pretty for a while, but then when it's getting really hot, oh, it's a struggle.
Oh yeah. And you know, it's also bad on your back if you're wanting to tote two 5-gallon buckets. I will tell you that because I used to do it for, you know, livestock for years, 2 5-gallon buckets, you know, for a long time down to the barn, and he'd like to kill me. It's bad on your back too. But yeah, just put the buckets there, take the water hose around, fill up the buckets, and let it water itself. Hydrangeas were really bad about getting really droopy when we had all that heat, and they don't like a lot of hot sun. The 100-degree weather was not good for them.
Right.
So I actually added a little more mulch underneath them to actually maintain some of that water condensation in the mulch to keep them wet, just enough moisture. And then I added a little bit more when I saw them they were starting to wilt, because we weren't for a month and 2 weeks we didn't get any rain whatsoever.
Right.
So yeah,
Thank
they need a little. So they make tree watering bags. You can get the one that goes around the bottom of the bark for $20, or you can buy the one that looks like a little donut. They're both horrible to fill up. They take too much time, and then they blow the bark off the tree, and they were a great idea, and they're great in the wintertime. Don't get me wrong, you can use them in the wintertime. When the knee starts getting hot, you got to take that thing off because it just heats up. It's plastic, and any plastic that you actually, you know, starts heating up is not conducive to growth for anything. Like I said, they're all fighting that little thing to get it filled up is ridiculous. I bet I've got 100 tree bags in my shop, and well, who was it downtown said, we're gonna put some trees downtown. How many tree bags you got? We're putting those such around the trees. Number one, I don't have time to fill them up. When I can just go down and I can put 5 gallons of water on each one. So then you've got staked. I mean, it's up to you. You know, I much prefer this one over there because it's not touching the bark, so it's not getting it hot. So if you're gonna do it, I recommend a little donut guy. I think he's a little less expensive too. Staking stabilization, we talked about that. It's often not necessary. Some people just do it because they can. But if you've got heavy winds, like Trice Landing, give you for instance down here, we were right next to the river. The wind coming off that river is really, really hard on trees. And if you don't stake them somehow, they're gonna move. A riparian buffer I built for Billy Dunlop. The creek got up, come up over the trees and moved all the trees. So what we have to do, we had to pull out a mini X and we had to go back in there. We had to straighten up those trees, and that meant digging them back up, pulling them back up like they were supposed to, and restake it. So sometimes even nature is against us, but they're still there. They look good. They keep getting buried by sand sometimes when the creek gets up. We go out there and scrape sand off them and keep going. But they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. They're actually creating a barrier, and they're actually holding that bank in. And that's what we needed, was the root system to hold the bank in there at the creek, because the creek was starting to erode really, really bad. Parks had mowed it right up to the very, very edge for years and years and years. And then we had one guy that was slightly muddy one day, mowed up to the edge and went to go backwards with his Z turn. And instead it went over into the creek, him and the Z turn. Took a backhoe to get him out. He was okay, thank goodness, but it scared him to death. And we realized at that point we weren't doing the right things. So we need to remediate the situation. So I pulled a 70-foot buffer, 70 feet from the edge of that creek, because it was starting to erode really bad. It was starting to get rills, which are caused by lots of water going really, really fast. We were losing a lot of silt into the water, which didn't need to happen because silt and fish don't mix together. And we were making our creek just full of silt. And so we built a riparian buffer. We put 25 large 2.5-inch caliber trees in there. Then we took 30. And then I ordered 70 seedlings, 70 native seedlings, tree seedlings, and native bushes from East Tennessee Nursery. We poked those in there also. And it looked pretty good. And lo and behold, somebody in the springtime decided that they didn't like the look it had, even though we had a disclaimer with a sign on it, and took a lawnmower back there and mowed a little trails for them to get to the creek. I don't know who's doing it. I don't have a clue, but they do it every now and then because they just run a little trail. Don't get it. We have to go in there every now and then and do an invasive species removal. We get a lot of, what are those things called? Different trees. I don't remember what they were. And we take out all the trees that are being really boxwoods. They can be really invasive, and we wanted the oaks and the dogwoods and everything to get up to enough height. And if we'd let the boxwoods stay there, they would have got higher than the trees in less than about 3 years. So we went in there and we punched all those out. And we stay at it every year, moving those. But it's really looking good. It's doing what it's supposed to, and it's making sure that none of the soil erodes from the side of the creek bank anymore. Staking, main consideration for the first growing season, if you want to do it at all. I don't recommend them after the first year. And like I said, the worst problem is the homeowners and developers and the Southern Service gas station still has them on there 2 or 3 years later. And by then, they're creating a serious flaw in the branch structures, because all the hoses and everything have actually grown to the tree. So will that tree eventually have to be removed? Probably so. It's gonna either die or live a little while. I don't know. I took pictures of them. I'm doing a science experiment. I want to see how long it's gonna last. Look at this guy right here. What's your name? It's got a great central leader on it. It's been staked. It's got, what is that the problem? That's to actually keep something from hitting the bottom of the tree. We actually use big corrugated gutter pipe with holes in it, and we cut it, and then we cut a slit in it when we actually do our trees, and then we put it around the base of the tree, and we leave it there for 2 years. That keeps anybody from weed whacking the base of our trees. Because if you weed whack or run into the base of the tree and you damage the bark, then generally you kill the tree. I haven't seen very many that were damaged that made it. They don't last very long. This person here, looks like they just forgot about the tree. And nobody's pruned it. It just looks like somebody planted by the street and just walked off, forgot it. It's been sitting there for a long time. Trunk wrapping. The ball burlap that you saw earlier will wrapped in nursery to prevent bark injury during shipment. I've got one guy, I can't remember the name of the nursery, but he uses old feed sacks and dog food bags. And he gets them from the processing plant. I think he pays for them, but he takes them and wraps around the trunks to protect the trunk when he actually moves those. And then we get all these wonderful dog bags and stuff that we actually keep. And we keep them because we've had to move trees again, and we'll just wrap around the base of those trees to move them. So you can always use them for something. Paper sacks, burlap, that's been done. Let's see. It provides protection, should be removed after planting, removed before planting. Well, unless it's on the actual trunk. Tree wraps do little to protect newly protected trees in hot sunny locations against sunfall or full. Yeah. I had a tree in the backyard. I don't know what I was thinking. One of those trees and it had the paper where they had stapled it on the bark. And then I looked down at it about a year and a half after I planted. I was like, I removed all the rest of it and took all the rest of the trees. Why didn't I do this one over here in the corner? I've been looking at it, watering it for how long? I should have removed it a long time ago. I pulled it up and looked at it. It was a little bit moist and bad. I caught it at the right time, but I just forgot to remove the paper. And sometimes, you get in a hurry. I do it all the time, and I'm busy, and sometimes you just forget to do things. But you definitely want to remove to keep disease and insects from getting up underneath it. We actually use the gutter guards for the first 2 years, but they've got the holes in them, so the air is going through and it's actually permeating. If you do that and you use them, make sure to wear gloves when you take that gutter guard off, because everyone just about that we have pulled off has generally got a snake in it. They love to pull up around that tree to get warm in that little gutter guard. And every time we pull them off, we take the gloves, we snatch one of them off with the other person holding the other side, and it'll be something in there. Salamander, snake, something. It's a good place to get warm. Like I said, make sure you do a soil test before you start planting anything. Most ornamental plants grow between 5'5" and 10'7". Soil tests should be done during development of new area or landscape bed prior to planting the plant. Make sure to pre-game, that's what I call it. Plants don't over fertilize them. Don't do like my dad. And he's like, well, if it'll make it grow this big, I'll add another cup more. My dad has over fertilized everything we've ever grown our whole entire life. My dad, that's not going to work. It's not what's for 10, 10, 10s, and you're supposed to read the bag and do it like this. And then he wonders how come some of the stuff dies. Well, that's why. So make sure you don't over fertilize. Make sure you read the bag. First 2 years you plant your native tree, try not to fertilize it other than give it the fertilizer if you can. Fertilization of established plants. After 2 years, you can fertilize it, but make sure, like I said before, you read the bag and you only apply what's needed. Do it by trunk diameter is how they do it for trees. So much per diameter of tree. So make sure that you know the diameter of your tree. If you don't know the diameter of the tree, get your tape measure out. Measure breast height right about here, and make sure you know what size your tree is. General tree vigor is determined by comparing the length of twig growth in the past 3 to 4 years. If you can look at your trees and it doesn't look like any twigs are growing on it, you might need a little fertilizer, but I always would do a little check. You can use granular fertilizer. You want to fertilize February through July. I had somebody tell me the other day that they heard you can do trees twice a year. I was like, no, I do mine February through July. I don't put more fertilizer. Why would I fertilize them in the fall? That doesn't make sense. She was saying, you need to fertilize them in August, September, October. No, I don't think so. Yeah. Fertilize in the winter or early spring to get soil test results. Start the application of this is the big one. Everybody's like, let's fertilize a tree. Let's put it around the trunk. That's not where your feeder roots are at. The feeder roots are at the very edge of your canopy. So you're going to go to the very edge of your canopy as you're looking up, and that's where you're going to start your fertilizer application. And you're going to go all the way around the edge of that canopy. Do not put it next to the trunk on the tree, because that's not where the fertilizer goes. It goes to the feeder roots on the outside. When it rains, the water comes down, and it actually waters the feeder roots. If any of the nutrients are coming, it goes to the feeder roots. And that's where you want all this to go to. Don't do around the base. Not doing you any good. Establish growth, good post, transplant care. Make sure removing tags or labels, unless, you know, I have to wait, leave my tags on there for the state to inspect my trees. Because if we get a grant, the state, yeah. Tennessee State Agriculture Department wants to come out and they don't want to do an inspection. I'll have mine in the ground by December, January, and they'll come out in April, actually May, to inspect the tree. But I've got to make sure I leave the tag that's on the tree so they can actually identify. And you want to make sure you water your newly planted trees, the root zone thoroughly once a week. And anything that's container grown, pretty much anything's ball burlaps except to drought stress once they're transplanted to the landscape. That's the iffy area. If you keep that tree good and moist, that tree will grow. If you let that tree dry out, it'll get stressed. It'll get stressed and it will die. So it's on you. I mean, do you want to keep the tree or you know what? If you have the trees and you still have them in the pots and you got them from the nursery, that's that media that I told you you can't get nice and moist again. And it just, if you don't keep it moist to a certain point, it will dry up. It's like a rock. It takes forever to get that stuff actually moist again. Let's see. Newly planted trees and shrubs show little shoot growth in the first year or two, but they're developing root systems. I've got 5 oaks that I planted 3 years ago around the house. And I waited and waited. This year they decided they were going to start out. Man, they went poof. And I didn't touch them. Still waiting. Do they need to be pruned? I'm still kind of waiting because they were late coming out, but I think it was due to the weather. It didn't stop raining and it really didn't get warm until June. And that's when the leaves came out on the oaks. The rest of the trees were already in leaf and these were still standing there nothing off. And I go over and do a little scratch test and make sure they were green. And I was like, well, not dead. Maybe they're just white. They needed the heat. Is I think what they needed. And plus they're more like in a lower area. And I think they needed that heat to actually make that leaf and pop. But I knew they were getting enough water. I knew that, you know, they were okay. Nobody smacked them. You know, they were taking care of them. But yeah, it just took a little while. So just because your tree doesn't get leaves on all of a sudden, don't freak out. Wait for it. I get a lot of people I had somebody the other day, it's like, this tree doesn't have any. Now let's get this really straight. I had a gentleman come stand in my doorway and he had a chainsaw in his hand. And I was like, why you got a chainsaw? He's like, well, we had to cut 2 trees down. 2 trees where? I said, why are you cutting my trees? He said, uh-oh. And I said, where are they at? He said, well, they were dead and we were told to cut them down. I said, tell me where they're at. I'll go look at them. They were flowering plums. Flowering plums and cherry trees start to defoliate at the 1st of July. Because this tree didn't have any type of leaves on it 2 weeks ago, they thought they were dead and cut 2 of them down. Perfectly good trees. I went and looked at the stump. The stump was still bleeding water. Took a picture of it. Now I told them, I said, this is why people that don't know anything about trees do not touch trees. And you let them have chainsaws. So did they get in trouble? I'm not quite really sure, but the whole tree removal thing was stopped. I said, do not cut another tree in the city of Clarksville till you go past me. I said, because I need to come out and look at it, deem it that it's dead before you start whacking them cut. We lost 2 trees on 5,048. That's 5,000 what? 45? 6. 2 trees gone. Tree ordinance says for the city of Clarksville that for every caliper of a tree that you cut down, you have to put 1 back. So those were 6 caliper trees. So they owe me 12 trees. And that's what you're going to have to put back to remediate the amount of stormwater that those trees were actually sucking up. So don't touch the trees. Pruning, we talked about pruning. Practice wants to maintain healthy, vigorous plants of desirable shape and size. I like this little one. Where's your anesthesiologist? Do you think trees feel it when you're pruning them? Probably so. You want to maintain your plant by removing the 3Ds is what I call it. You got dead, damaged, or diseased. You want to improve the appearance of your plant by training to a particular shape or size. You definitely want to mow on it without getting smacked in the head. And pruning can increase the density of a plant which helps shape or train plants in unnatural forms such as hedges or espaliers. If any of y'all haven't seen espaliers, there's a guy that has some, and his first ones I've seen, I had to go get a book because I was like, how do you prune espaliers? That was a new one for me because he had them, he put them up there, and then he didn't know how to prune them and wanted me to show him how to prune them. I don't know. You know what I'm talking about. Yeah, I had to go get a book to figure out how to do espaliers. That took a little while, but now I can do it. But yeah, espaliers were actually made due to the fact that there wasn't a lot of room. I think it was England or France, so they would grow them against the buildings because there wasn't a lot of area for them, you know, in the field to actually grow. So they actually would stick them on the side of the buildings, and they look like they're doing this on the building. They produce fruit. I don't think it's as much fruit as what a regular fruit tree is in the field, but I mean, it does work. It is pretty. It does help cool down the building. That's top. Looks bad. And where's the left picture at, Carla? That's, I know where that one's at. That's downtown. This is a county park. I got a phone call about this and want to know how come I did this. I'm like, I didn't do that. I had to make several phone calls to find out who did it and why. If you notice, there's some Christmas tree, was that thing that they put lights they put over the top of it, a drape or whatever it was. They cut it back to put the drape on because it wouldn't fit. They've since come back, but they don't look like they're supposed to. They look horrible. Yeah, that was county. It was a long conversation. I bet. But they promised not to do it anymore. We're working with the county. The county's fixing to get a county forester for here also. From what I'm understanding, they're working on a grant to do that. Once they get that, that person will be very busy. Doing a lot of county trees. But that's topping at its worst for it. That is what you should not do, and that means a tree. Some of those trees were already bubbling gas out of them. I noticed. I know. And they didn't look very well. So what do you mean by that? They had a disease, and I can't remember what the name of it is, but Carl and I looked at a couple of them, and it was just oozing. Oh, bacteria. That's what it was. Bacterial flux. It smells like beer, and you get a lot of wasps and stuff that'll get around it. And you can sometimes it goes. I mean, you can just actually hear it. It kind of looks like beer foam. Yeah, kind of amber colored and kind of foamy looking as it comes out. And that's just, yeah, it didn't do well at all. Oh, Carl, we're like way behind. Now this is the good stuff. This tree needed a trim that's oak on the left. That was before. If you don't trim a tree the way it's supposed to be done, where the air can get through it and flow through it, generally when you have a tornado or a really big windstorm, it's going to catch it and it's going to throw it. This is more uniform, and you can see the open spaces in it. The wind's going to go through it, right? And that tree's not going to get through it. But probably that tree had never been trimmed for a long, long time. But you do need to trim your tree from time to time. And we talked about why you prune, because you're going to move the misshapen, like the red bud out there, the crowded, rubbing together. If you don't get them when they're not rubbing together, they're going to grow into each other. I've seen that. You're going to droop on other branches for support. You're not going to be able to get up underneath that tree. You actually want to do it because you'll have all kinds of different crotch angles and branches that cross over each other. You get a weight of snow or ice on there, you're going to see, the branches pop. And You also, if you don't, print like you're supposed to, you want to stimulate for increased flowering or fruiting. If you don't do your orchard trees like you're supposed to, you won't get the right amount of, apples. I had an apple tree at my other house. The owners was like, well, we never got an apple one out of it. I'm like, this thing is massive. Got on a ladder, printed like I was supposed to. Very next year, I had just tons of apples. They were the prettiest apples I ever saw. And it was due to the fact that you printed it and you did it right. But you can't get fruit if you don't do what you're supposed to. Many flowering plants produce more flower buds the following season if old flowers are removed because they lose their attractiveness. Called deadheading. Yeah, I basically just deadhead a lot of the flowers around the house for flower buds. It's basically for your, like I said, 5 Ds, I forgot: dying, dead, deformed, damaged, and diseased. And then you want the 5 Cs, which are cankers, conks, cracks, cavities, and crotches. Never remove any cross branches or branches rubbing against. Remove any cross branches or branches rubbing against each other. The branch is removed should be cut back to its origin or to a side branch that's 1/2 its size. That's why you had that one sticking way out earlier, because that should have been cut back a long time ago. But those are what you do to start printing correctly. We talked about the right printing technique. The correct location is the cut, and you want to do it on the outside of the swollen area called the branch collar. You want to do it right over through there. Don't cut into the tree itself, just the branch collar. Don't leave a stub, because the stub will rot. It will suck rainwater in it, and it will start to rot, and it will kill the rest of the tree eventually. But yeah, leaving a stub maintains an open pathway to decay, so never leave stubs. That one is a bad pruning practice. See where they got into the tree? It's going to take forever for that tree to heal itself, if it does. Good luck. This is tough. Looks like poodle tails, doesn't it? That's the worst thing you can do to a tree. Now that's a correct. Still a little close for me though. I don't like it that close. A little bit. Those limbs are actually done correctly. But yeah, this, like I said, I don't know why people want to do it. After the tornado that we had last December, I had so many scared people, and they were just going around just topping their trees out. And they were scared they were going to fall on their house, and they were perfectly good trees. I don't understand. They were just terrified. Proper pruning techniques. You want to find your branch part ridge. Like I said, where the red lines are, that's where the proper pruning should be. And you want to cut that weight off like we discussed earlier. That way, when you actually make that main cut there, you don't tear off your branch and tear off into your tree. And like I said, don't leave any stubs, don't flush cut. The tree can repair itself if you do it right, but this is way into the tree, and there's no way it's going to be able to repair itself, because that tree starts coming around like this, and it can't do it. It's just too stressed out. 3-cut method, like I explained, cut all the weight off. This does with the limb on there. I just cut the weight of the limb off if I have to, and then I just go under, cut that one cut, and then I make the main cut. And that keeps the tree from actually tearing up. Pruning cut should be made just outside the branch collar. Codominant stems develop. Bark may be included in the crotch. It's best to prune one of the stems of the tree is young. Chris's grandma, my husband's grandmother had a tree, and I had a codominant stem on it. One was straight, one was going towards the shed, and it was spread around. So I told her, I said, you wait till fall, I'll fix it. And I did it 2 years ago, and it's still healing, and I'm still watching it because it still hasn't all the way covered it. And I don't want to see it rot or decay, so I'm still eyeballing it. But if I'd have left it like that and we'd had a big windstorm, that whole thing would come out like this, and you would run both pieces of the tree. But when you're pruning, you want a very strong, permanent leader here. You want to make sure that all your scaffolding branches complement each other, and they're kind of like a wagon wheel all the way around. International Society of Arboriculture's Arborist Certification Study Guide states that topping or heading back is not a recommended pruning method for trees. Crown reduction, drop crotch pruning are the terms used by certified arborists. So if you get an arborist wants to come work on your tree and he goes, well, you want me to top it? I'd send him on his way. Crown reduction is a thing. You can do lateral prunes and reduce the amount of your crown. You can do a reduction. You can drop crotch prune. But all those terms are something that an arborist, and if you don't know if they're a certified arborist or not, go to the ISA website, put their name in. If their name's not in there, and there's only a couple people here in Clarksville, me, Carl, and somebody else, that are actually certified. This is what happens when you top a tree. You get new shoots developed below the cuts, and you get all these shoots. And they're all vying for sunlight. They're all trying to make it, and they don't do well. But they generally decay, and they often become a hazard because everything rots, and then it just falls apart from the top down.
Let's go into the detail. Maybe.
Yeah. Do you really want to go into all that?
No, it's already by that. Here, we
Yeah.
got the other rest. I will send them, it'll be like.
Yeah. You probably got about 15 slides to go. So, this is more like if you're doing bushes, you generally want to cut at the nodes and do the buds direct below the heading cuts, and you can produce new shoots. Sometimes you'll get your stuff in the front yard that just, it starts looking like crazy, forsythia bush, and you kind of want to make it more compact. And this is what you do to it to make it look better. Thinning, I do a lot of thinning. You get older branches or older stuff that needs some thinning as it's crossing and looking really bad. We just did Fort Defiance last week, and had to do that to a bunch of branches out front and make them look a whole lot better because they were looking pretty rough. If you want to do some really severe renewal pruning to a bush, not a tree, you can just take it all the way down to the ground, just about. I did a butterfly bush like that, and it looked horrible, and it come out looking really, really good. I was surprised. I did a lilac bush like that too, and it come out looking better because it was really getting leggy and it wasn't producing. Shearing, leave it for your boxwoods. If you like that English look around your house, you know, you're going to want to shear them. Needle leaf evergreens, yews, hemlocks. If you like that formal look, you know, that's what shearing's about. Fruit production. You want to go over that? Okay. What else do we miss? We kind of went through that. I won't do that. That's orchard. It's all you. Oh. Know when to prune. Anybody likes maple syrup? Don't prune. Yeah, past February because that thing will weep. We've pruned them, and I've looked up. I'm like, oh man, that's maple, and stood underneath it. Mouth open. It's sweet, but we shouldn't have pruned it yet. We should have pruned it a lot earlier before the sap rises in them. Make sure you get them pruned. They're going to be bleeders if you don't. Yeah, make sure also that you're ensure proper plant response after pruning. Be aware of what you're pruning. Some things don't need to be pruned at certain times of year, like let's see, what's my name, guys? Viburnums, lilacs, forsythias, azaleas. You know, before July 1, that's okay for those. But you've got several other type of bushes that you don't need to be pruning till later on in the year. Just be mindful of what you're pruning. Fruiting shrubs, don't prune until after the fruit loses beauty. Only thin branches is as needed bases, Pycanthia, holly barberry, Nandina, be kind of sparing with them. Be careful about your narrow leafed evergreens and your broadleaves. You can prune them as long as the wood's not frozen. Young trees. By the fifth year, you should have some major scalpel branches that should be spaced right. You don't have to cut back the canopy of the tree when you're transplanting it, like you do an orchard tree. Just an orchard tree. Mature trees, if you got mature trees, yeah, they're gonna get big. And in the summertime, they're gonna get a lot of weight with the leaves and they're gonna hang down. Be sparing, don't just lop off one, trim the weight up, look at it, let it go up by itself. Because if you do, you're just getting too much. That's a horrible topping work right there. I just can't believe people do that. But they do, and it might come back out for the next year or two or three, but eventually it's gonna shorten the lifespan of that tree. And
Ground repairs,
mm-hmm.
where they just buzz them and then they just get some.
If they knew what they were doing, they'd go through and do a canopy cleaning and just kind of let them bring some of the stuff out of the middle. I took this in 4 to 5. This was kind of cool. I forgot about this, but you see all the actual roots that are actually stringing out and they're touching each other. I thought that was kind of neat. I have to go back and see if it's still there. But they're sharing a lot of stuff in between. Looks like a spider web, doesn't it? And that's it. Sorry it took so long. Right. Any questions? All appreciate it. Sorry. No, I can do this, but.
See if we have any questions. What was the name of the documentary you mentioned? Okay, I'll try to get the answers to these questions. All right, we'll see y'all.
Thank you very much.